That was kind of a hint.
That actually wasn't me, but if you are ready to get started, I'll record for our purposes. That was Ted's recording starting.
Yes, I presume that was, yeah. So it's time, so it's appropriate to begin with
I
the
will,
public hearing.
before you begin, Joel, I will just say it's a little bit soft. Are the microphones on and working?
They are.
Maybe it's my volume.
Am I
Could just be
hard
me.
to hear?
You have to have it close enough to you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So welcome everyone, whether here in person or in the Zoom audience. Our first item of business tonight is the public hearing on the local law which we're entertaining to provide the tax exemption for basically for firefighters in Danby since we don't have an ambulance service. And the board would be pleased to hear from any of you who'd like to comment. Ted. Yes, you'll have to unmute Ted so he can speak. You look to be muted on your end, Ted.
Try now,
Thank
is that
you once again. Let's not touch any buttons so I can be heard. I think it's a great idea to show some
Well,
kind
it
of
says you're unmuted, but I can't
appreciation.
hear you.
Excuse me, you can't hear me? Oh, is it possible the volume on your speaker is not turned up? Because my mic is saying
Still nothing.
it can hear me.
I don't know what's.
Can anybody hear me?
I can
Maybe
hear
your
you, Ted.
microphone isn't working.
Wait, somebody spoke up and said I can hear you. So
Try somebody else.
Yeah.
Whilst we're waiting,
okay, I'll count to 100 and see if you can fix whatever problem there is that prevents you from hearing me. 1.
we did, and David just got it. You're good now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. First thing, would you mind adjusting the video a little bit? I can see Steve rather nicely, and I can see only the table at the far end. You can see what's on the screen, so please do adjust it. Listen, it's a really nice thing that you show some appreciation for people, individuals or groups that contribute to the town's welfare. And so, yeah, the other way, guys.
I'm looking.
Too far. You fix it. And so, of course, I support this sort of exemption. I would like to note, though, can't see Steve now. I'd like to note, though, that an earlier possibility of providing an exemption for a group that provides significant positive welfare to the town, that was, just to be specific, some kind of tax exemption for people who have large properties with conservation easements on them. After a lot of work by a committee of citizens, basically the town did what? I'm not aware that the state legislature authorized it, but I'm not aware that the town ever did anything significant about it. I know you may have taken some small steps toward it, but where is it? Hasn't gone anywhere. So I'm perfectly in favor of this. And I think you should give equal treatment to the large landowners who spend considerable tax money providing a rural environment for the rest of the citizens.
To answer your question, it's with the CAC, who has been working on it.
You are quite soft. How about moving that microphone?
Not the perfect.
Yeah, off topic. Anyone else? Well, yes, Gary.
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate what I said at the last town board meeting. This is long overdue for the firemen. They put a lot of hours of training in. They get nothing out of it, no pay or anything, so I think it's a great opportunity for them, and I think it should go through with no problems. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anybody here? Am I missing somebody on screen?
There's no mail out there? Well, I know Marv wasn't on today, so he must have had some because he was working on his roof. When I
Well,
went,
they didn't come to get the card. I sent the
Okay.
card to David Herson, so there's been no pickup or anything.
Oops, Gary, you might want to mute yourself.
Said you want to mute?
Okay.
There we go. I think he was just having a conversation.
Any-
Somebody else?
Siggy?
Wait,
Who? Oh, here,
Yeah.
yes, please, do, come on.
That might not be turned on.
Right. No, the,
There should
see
be
the
a
switch
switch
right on
right
the top of it there? There you go.
Yes. My name is Jethro Forbes. I'm one of the assistant chiefs of the Danby Fire Company, and I appreciate you taking the time to entertain the passage of this really amazing initiative that the state passed through and the county is considering as well, I think tonight as well. My fellow firefighters in West Danby as well as Danby and EMTs, first responders who respond to medical calls as well. We do what we do because we love to help folks and we love to be an active part of the community, to bond with the folks, our neighbors, and to be there in times of need when our neighbors need somebody. And we do it because it's something that is rewarding, not because of a financial incentive. We signed up as volunteers and we knew it was volunteer. And so there's certainly never been an expectation. Yet having said that, we're very, I guess, just pleased to know that this is being considered a modest break for the folks that own land, because this is a break for just folks that are homeowners. We really appreciate the consideration and hope it passes with a positive review from you guys and the rest of the community. We also hope it might be an incentive to attract new volunteers and new members. As we are chronically, as volunteerism across the US and North America in general is down, we are chronically understaffed and unfortunately don't have a lot of folks to help everybody out that we really want to have. So hopefully this will provide a further incentive in our recruitment efforts to help our neighbors and help the town and yeah, do the right thing. So thank you for your time.
Anybody else like to comment? Don't be shy.
nice to see you here.
Yes, it is.
I'll say something
Okay,
as an audience. Am I on? Yeah.
yes.
I see familiar faces who've come to help me twice since I've lived here. So I very much appreciate the willingness and the consideration and the care that can come from our neighbors and our helpers and our friends. And I really appreciate, especially that first time I would have died. 7 degrees and outside with a broken back. Thank you.
I'll add, I was at the Tompkins County Council of Governments meeting last week, and Jay Franklin was there, and he briefed the assembly on the features of this, and he was a little bit, I guess I could say, disappointed at how little benefit it actually is, because it's either this or a tax credit. And you probably are aware of the limitations of it. You know, you have to live in the area that you're serving, and you have to, of course, be a homeowner in order to qualify it at all. And then there's this offset where if it's even close to $200, you're better off using the other mechanism. But we're happy to do what we can. You know, it's a step in the direction. Jay was thinking, you know, it would have been easier if they just raised how much it was with the tax credit instead of, because that applies to everybody. But I think when we come to it, you'll find that, you know, we're solid in support of what little it can do. Anyone else have comment? If not, close the public hearing. Did somebody else have their
I
hand
think
up?
it's the cursors, right?
Yes, right.
I
Yeah,
know, yeah. But those,
yeah, that little hand.
There
right,
it
yes. Yeah,
okay.
why it's a cursor, I don't know. Yeah. It's a little hand of mine too. When it's in the screen. Okay, so we'll call the regular meeting to order. There have been a couple of additions to the agenda. And as before, I think it would be easiest to just move them all down to the beginning of business. If that's okay with everybody. Anything else?
Anything?
Well, one got added at the last minute, maybe after you printed it. Yeah, right. Got it?
What's the third one?
The third one was the scheduled a special meeting with the potential IT services provider.
Okay.
So, are we good? Okay, so next up is privilege of the floor, an opportunity for anyone to speak to any issue for 3 minutes that they would like to address the board with or on. And I see Rhonda has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I have a couple of things that I would like to say since I hope Steve is here. Yeah, it looks like Steve is here. When it's his time to speak, I would like to hear a little more about what's going on with 116 South Danby Road. And in light of the discussion about rentals, I would like to say this. When I was working for the federal government in 2020 and working particularly in Danby, I can assure you that there are people renting in the town of Danby with small children and teenage children who are living in horrible conditions. These are rental facilities, and we desperately need for these facilities to be checked so that we know that they're passing code and that when the people rent them out, they are clean and free of insects like bed bugs and cockroaches, and that they're kept up by their owners. And so I am urging you, the town board, to take action on that, to make sure that when before people actually rent out, their facility is inspected and inspected regularly. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay.
Oops.
Anyone else?
Can I just reply? I'm not familiar with 116 South Danby Road.
Well, you have to drive by it in order to get to 96B from where you live. And it is next to Mary Woodson's property, and there is someone attempting to put a structure on it. Appears to be, as far as I know, without a building permit. And now they've put up a mailbox.
Okay. Ted.
There we go. Hiya. I'm just reading down, looking at the agenda, and I'm gonna just read down it. I looked at several of the documents backing them and have some comments about them. It's in the order that it appears on the agenda, not necessarily the order you're discussing it in. Letter of support for the arts grant application. You know, this is quite interesting, and I urge you to support it, and I'm going to give you sort of a reason for that. Reason one is this is arts. I'm not going to, there's art that everyone appreciates and art that people don't appreciate as much. So you really can't judge any application on the art of it. or on the success of it. I know some pretty good art that I thought was pretty good art that wasn't too successful. I think you should support it just on speculation on the possible benefit to the town. Moving down on from there, question about the January clerk report about monies collected. I don't know if it should be on that report, but it sure would be nice to hear how tax collection went during January.
When you notice the report here is November, Ted.
The one on, this is one of those website things. Right now, if you look on the website, there are November, December, and January reports.
Okay.
And the January report does not include any information about tax collection. I don't know if it should, but it'd be nice to hear it. You don't describe very much the possible use by the Chamber of Commerce for the town hall, but in the past, I think the town board has wisely discouraged commercial use of the town hall, and I hope you'll stick with that. You have something in there about, oh, I'm out of order. You have something in there about loader replacement. I would suggest that the motion that is on the website contains numerous typos and errors of that kind, and that you revise it before you get finished. And finally, that takes me to the zoning law, late on the agenda. And I think that I have a speculation on why this is coming up as a topic for you. And if I read the presentation correctly, the key issue that's being talked about is whether or not the Beardsley Lane property is going to be used as a tourist home. And there is words on there that talk about let's have favorable interpretations of the law that are favorable to the applicant, but you should try to avoid, shall we say, nonsense interpretations. And any house that contains a vast majority of its bedroom space, which is going to be rented, and the owner happens to live in one bedroom on the lowest floor, that's not that means the primary use, this is just common sense, the primary use of that building is as a rental. And I don't think anybody really would want what amounts to a motel in their neighborhood, unless, of course, it was a seriously commercial neighborhood like a downtown Ithaca. So I would, although you don't seem to be doing any business on it, you're just going to discuss it, I would like to just put in the 2 cents that there is something a little odd when 5 bedrooms are considered a secondary use compared to a 1-bedroom with a kitchenette. And you perhaps would want to get some on the record, Steve Courtwright's, shall we say, inspection or description of the premises. And if it doesn't agree with my quick interpretation of it, then I'm wrong. Other than that, I think you should discourage this sort of thing. I think I've gone through the whole thing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, anyone else on privilege before? Yes, come on up, please.
My name is Andrew Cove. I'm one of the Beardsley Lane. Is it good? Which
on the bottom. So it must have got turned off again. Off is on.
Turn it on.
Yeah, you can. You need not. You can pull it up to your height.
So my name is Andrew Cove. I'm one of the residents of Beardsley Lane that signed the letter that came to the town board members, I believe. And that kind of outlines what we'd like you to discuss to do with the zoning laws. You got 2 letters. You got a separate one from Virginia Tessie. But just briefly, and I won't take up a lot of your time, what we'd like you to consider is clarification of the zoning law as it pertains to tourist homes in particular. We request the town board to define what constitutes a tourist home in a low-density residential zone. Specifically, how do you define primary and secondary? That's as far as it goes. There's no further real description of that. And actually, Ted kind of broached on the point that just briefly, is a house where you still have a family living in it. But for instance, they could be renting 5 bedrooms and living in 2. Is that really still the primary thing, the family living there? It doesn't seem like it to us. And it just needs definition because it's wide open. We're also asking that there's an ambiguity, I think, in a tourist home has to go through a site plan review. And there's a lot of language in the zoning laws about special permits. And we think that if a home is built and it was built as a single family residence with a single family dwelling building permit, and for us, it's 105 Beardsley Lane. When it becomes a tourist home, it's changing use and activity. And that should, rather than just being a site plan review, that should really be subject to the general provisions and the special permits in the zoning laws. And the last thing is, I know this is a tough one in these instances. How do you enforce this? If there's certain things that you're meant to do with a tourist home and certain things that there aren't, who enforces it and how do you enforce it? So I think that's our issues. I'd like you're going to discuss them later, I think, and I'd like you to consider putting further definitions and maybe doing what you have to do with the law so it's more understandable for the next people involved in something like this. Thank you.
Anyone else? The privilege of the floor. I don't see any more hands or. Okay, then there was some correspondence which is noted on the agenda. There are no announcements to my knowledge. Evidently, there are a couple of town clerk reports that got added at the very, very last minute because I didn't see them.
Would you like me to speak to that, Joel?
Sure.
Yeah, and I actually was my intention to include some of the tax collection on those reports, and as everyone noticed, it was a little late addition. But I basically have November, December, and January, and then where did I just put? I can verbally tell you that in the month of January, the total we received in the tax collections was $3,137,633.52. I've been doing weekly payouts to Joel. I think I might have missed yesterday's payout, but those have been going out and cash is being deposited into the bank. Yeah, that's it. Any questions?
I have one question.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea why the town hall meeting frame is
Is it glitchy? I was wondering that myself.
acting weird? Yeah. It seems to resolve itself now.
Yeah, I don't want to jinx anything, but we've had some issues with phones and internet the past couple of days.
Yeah, but I'm on too, and it's not doing that, but
I can see it on my screen that it's like the old TVs that lose the reception.
yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, at least we can see everybody else. I have no idea why it's doing what it's doing. So we don't approve the clerk's report anyway, do we? So
Nope.
it's a matter of receiving it. So it's now been received. It's nice to have you caught up.
Agreed.
We have the code officer's report. David, would you like to give a planner's report?
Sure, and I'll give it from here if that is okay. I'm happy to come in the room later or now if you have questions as well, but kind of the big news of what was accomplished recently is that the town submitted an application to Restore New York for funds to help with renovations needed to open the Danby market in the center of the Danby hamlet. If we're successful in that, that would be, I think, a huge win for the town's comprehensive plan and goals, to have a market, locally serving market right in the middle of the hamlet. We also completed the RFP process for a consultant to run the $500,000 homeowner rehabilitation grant that we won last year. So I think hopefully by the end of the week, Joel will have contracted up with Toma Development to manage that program. And we'll start getting applications in, getting applications out to the community and reviewing applications and start getting homes rehabilitated as soon as, building can start. So I think we're in a good position to have that rolling in the second quarter of this year, which would be excellent. Beyond that, we had a productive planning board meeting. The planning board reviewed a subdivision application for 1860 Danby Road, which is in the Hamlet neighborhood zone, and will be dividing approximately 2.2 acre parcel in half. That will be back before the board again this month. We also heard from 105 Beardsley Lane, which some of the public comments earlier this meeting were about, which was an application for site plan review for a tourist home on that parcel. And that will continue before the board this month, I expect. And we also heard from 360 East Miller. That was the application from Ms. Shibata, who has previously been before the town board requesting zoning change for her parcel on East Miller. She's continuing to pursue variance to try and achieve those goals that the town board was unwilling to change the zoning for. It's my understanding at this point in time that she has at least temporarily pulled her application and will not be before the BZA. But we've gone back and forth on that before. We did not have a BZA meeting in January.
I remarked that you had one scheduled for February. Was it for Tomo and that's now maybe not happening? Or?
No, we will have a February meeting. I have a couple of things for that. One of them, we do have a request for a review of my zoning interpretation for 105 Beardsley Lane. Will be before the BZA. I assume the person requesting it didn't actually request it, so I'm working with them to get the correct paperwork filed, but I assume that will be in tonight, which is the deadline. And then we also have another application for variance related to a subdivision. But I don't believe that Tomo Shibata's application will be before the board. Well, I know it won't be before the board in February. I think she's not coming back, but we'll see. She's been back before. The other upcoming work is, you'll recall that we did win a grant for doing some visioning and more grant writing this year. I have a draft RFP for that, and that will be going out this month so that we can hire a consultant to help us with writing more grants this year. As far as the CDBG grant goes, we did get through all of the initial contracting with New York State. So we're just at the stage of contracting with the consultant.
And just for everybody to know, what that consultant will do is actually implement the program.
Yeah. They'll actually help people figure out what renovations are needed on their houses, help them hire and pay contractors to do that work, check up on the work after it's completed, and handle the process of invoicing the state and getting the contractors paid. So it's a very complicated, very specific skill set. And I think I'm glad that we found a consultant that has a lot of experience with that. We did have a couple of proposals that we reviewed, and this consultant really just had the most experience and has done this a lot of times for other towns. So I'm glad to be working with them moving forward.
Good, thanks, David.
Thanks, Dave.
There are no minutes to review, and we're still in the same position we were last time. So I didn't put anything on, because nothing's changed. We don't. Maybe it's not the best mic to be using. What I was saying is that there's no change in the status of minutes. We haven't gotten anything new.
Okay.
So I didn't put anything on because the board wasn't willing to take any action without further contributions. Steve?
Does that mean that there are also no minutes for the last meeting?
That's, yeah, the last minutes we got were, what, I don't remember even. Back in December, weren't they?
We didn't get December 6th.
Right, they were not complete.
We have the 21st with no changes in it. I saw that.
That was it.
Yeah, and that's where we still are. Well, okay, so no action tonight. Which brings us to the warrants. There was a couple of last minute changes. I'm going to show that got reflected. When I was reviewing, I discovered the QUIO, the Sugar Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization, dues were in there, but we don't have an agreement yet. So, pursuant to policy, there should be an agreement before we pay them. So I asked Janice to pull it.
We don't have an agreement. I thought we had an agreement.
We did last year, except that it was actually never formally executed. I actually, we did it in anticipation of the memorandum of understanding, at least what they do, or memorandum of agreement. My notes say that we did it. I couldn't find it. But it's a 1 year thing, is it not? Or do you have it? Would you have some indication to the contrary?
That's a 1 year thing.
Yeah. So we just need to do it again, but it's not yet done. And pursuant to policy, we don't pay until we have the agreements in place. So it was July by the time we got it done last year. We can do better than that, but not January. So that changes the total in general.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
So 689.
The dues for the Sugar Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization, QUIO.
54.
Toward the end.
So it takes off, I actually deleted it, but it makes the amount $64,494.81 is what the new total is without that voucher.
And how much are you saying it is?
The new amount without the QUIO is 64,494.81.
So what is that?
What about the,
And that includes the change on 30, where it was 1380 to 16. Is that already changed?
Did you hear that question, Janice?
Oh, no, I did not. Sorry.
On 30, air gas. That change has been made, so instead of 1380, they round to 16.
Yes, it was changed earlier this morning.
And what about the taxes on the credit card statement? Did you pay them? So not, did you put them off?
I don't think your mic is working, Pat. I think you're asking about the taxes on the credit card.
Yes,
Okay. And can you repeat the question?
yes, the taxes on the credit card statement.
Yes,
There were 3 different ones, 3 or 4 different ones. Are they
Yes.
still on there? Or are they taken off?
they are still on there. So
Why
if
is
you
that?
leave them on and they will be returned to the credit card, and then it will become a wash because that's what happens when things get returned.
Why do we pay them in the first place? We know it. I mean, normally that's when there's a mistake and you don't notice it in the first place, but we already noticed.
Yes, but I guess the question is, would you like to pay the late fee on not paying the full amount on the credit card, or would you like to just get reimbursed?
If
for
we
the
don't
taxes
know
that
it,
were-
there certainly shouldn't be a late fee on the credit card.
I'm sorry?
If we don't owe it and we don't pay it, there shouldn't be a late fee on the credit card.
Well, if you don't pay in full, then you get interest.
Not if you don't owe it in the first place. No.
The credit card company doesn't know that.
Yeah, sometimes call for an adjustment.
Yes.
That's the way to do it. You haven't call for an adjustment ahead of time. I'm just butting in, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I have, it's not on this bill, but it will be on the next one. I bought a new bracket for the flagpole and the taxes were 78 cents. And the hassle of trying to get them to do the tax exempt after I spent an hour, and they would approve it within 10 days, wouldn't do me any good anyway. So I just went ahead and paid it, and I'll pay the tax, but it's going to show up on the credit card bill. Well, it's just a case in point, you know, there may be other instances like that where, getting the vendor, whoever it is, to.
Is it hard to keep a copy in a wallet?
I had the letter, which we have in lieu of a tax exempt form.
But the one here we're talking about on the vouchers, that's for Staples. This is not a weird,
Okay,
this is a major operator.
right, and Staples, they should
They
have,
know.
they should have a tax exempt.
So all I can tell you is that we do have a tax exempt Staples account. Mistakes happen in town, they happen outside of town. All I can do is call it in and say, hey, can you reverse these charges? And then that's what they'll do. If you would like something else to happen, I feel like that is not my area of responsibility. So I will defer to whomever needs to handle bookkeeping and finances.
Well, what we have,
Laura,
for instance, you'll see some on there for Home Depot. Sometimes our guys will go down with a regular credit card instead of a Home Depot card. And what they'll do is they'll go down, they have to get some supplies for a particular project. They don't notice that Home Depot charged them tax on that because they weren't using the Home Depot card. They were using the KeyBank credit card. So it didn't come up as that. So then all of a sudden we'll get the bill and we'll see that there's some tax. Now, you don't have that on the highway abstract right now for that part of the key, and I'm going to put it on the next one. But some of those say for Home Depot, what I've got to do is I've got to chase Home Depot down. So I'll go down, discuss it with them, show them these bills that tax was in fact charged, and then they will turn around and then credit the KeyBank credit card. Because KeyBank doesn't have any control over what's happening with all our vendors, you know, as they're charging us. So when those come through, we have to go back to the store, to the vendor, to whoever we bought the
Vendor. Yeah.
and they have to put through a credit. Now in Joel's case, you know, trying to find a flagpole from a company probably out in the Midwest or something like that, or wherever they're located with the 78 cents is going to be kind of hard. And sometimes when you order things from other states, they don't always honor our tax exempt letters. And they will just push it right through. And there you go. Yeah, I guess if you want the merchandise, you got to go ahead and get it. So we'll be chasing down in those particular stores. Like Janice said, say Staples. We have to go back to Staples and show them that they charge tax. And then they have to in turn put it back through our credit card. So we see the credit in the next bill. So what we should do is check the next bill or the next one after that, because this takes time for them to process this. And it could even be into another one where they credit it, but we should keep a list of that and then we can cross check it and make sure we're getting our credits of our dollars, couple dollars here and there.
I will say that.
Yeah, because it's so confusing.
This tax exempt.
It's a lot of work,
Small
but-
purchase is a pain in the neck. It takes way more time, than we're getting back.
Not. I would argue with you that. But that's not what the state feels either. so
Yeah, I
it's not
know,
our
yeah.
choice.
No, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, that that we're not legally obligated to do it. I'm saying it's a pain in the neck for small purchases. It takes way more staff time, chasing a couple dollars than what, than it costs us if we were pay taxes we're not supposed to pay.
Every time anybody says it's a small amount, you have to remember, when you start adding small amounts up together over a period of time, it's not small after a while.
That's correct.
Just keeping perspective on that.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the idea of keeping that list. So that it, to check the
track.
that has happened,
Yeah.
but I wish there were some way that we could actually really make sure that whoever purchases has that sheet with them and uses it, even if they're using their own card. And I mean, I don't know how you sort it out when they're there, because they can say it's for the town and it's their personal card. It is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But these were not, because these were on the town credit card. This particular,
Laura was talking, these
Talking about the vendors.
but these are, the ones that we're talking about here from this night are,
are the town credit.
but, yeah, key
With
cards.
the town credit card.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right, I mean, they're the town credit card and they're also through the town Staples account, which is tax exempt. So
Right.
Thank you.
Sometimes if you don't use the store card that we have and you use the regular credit card, the credit card from Key, it goes into their system somehow and doesn't recognize the tax exempt. And they go through their purchase and that happens, and all of a sudden somebody looks and says, normally we come down here and we don't have tax. Now we've got tax on this. And at that point, it's beyond it's beyond the time the transaction's already gone through.
Yeah.
But
So
since we only,
everybody just has to be more careful. We all just have to be more careful if we're going to places.
and we do need to keep track of this so that we can find that the things have come back. So if we say it and don't check it, then it's our responsibility on the board.
Absolutely.
So, other problems?
Well, with the general abstract, what I'm coming up with is 64,708.73.
Which is more than it was, well, no, it's between, isn't it? Yeah. Where does the difference lie?
I don't know.
The $300
There's
more.
the total that was on the sheet, and then if you add the $2.20.
Yep.
From abstract 30, and then you subtract abstract 54. It's hard with these lines. I think it's 54. It's $689.25. I'm coming up with 64,708.73.
what was your original amount?
What was on the abstract,
Which was?
65,395.78. Well, I mean, the more recent one maybe was added to, what's this more recent? It's the $2.
So the other thing that you may be missing is the Central New York newspapers that was 411. And then it turned out that the 200 and some odd was already paid on a previous, on the abstract that was from January 18th. So they hadn't received that payment.
Number,
Wait, what voucher?
Abstract 33. Voucher 33.
so that was already paid?
A portion of it was. So it had a balance forward. They had received a payment, so that was taken off. And then there was a balance remaining from the balance forward, which was actually paid or approved to be paid on January 18th, but they haven't received that payment yet. So if you take that away, then it leaves $197.21 for the legal ads. So that might be where you're missing.
Yeah, that would reduce it.
So I can go through and tell you the totals for each claimant if you'd like.
Well,
I mean, I hate to be the sick horse, but you can tell me, but if I can't sit down and look at it and see that it's correct, I can't approve it. That's my problem. I'm sorry, but, so it's -2. While they're doing that, I also want to check, this is the very first abstract we've gotten that do not have account numbers on the abstract. The first one I have ever seen this way.
I think I sent about 5 emails with the updated link to the abstract that does have the account numbers on them.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, they did. The account numbers did show up. Okay.
Is it possible, Janice, not to send them out when they're not complete? Because it is very confusing when they're sent
As
out.
far as I was concerned last night when I sent them out, they were complete. So, you know,
But if it didn't have account numbers on it last night, then
No,
it's not
no.
complete. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, I'm getting 64,494.81.
Right, that's what she told me.
correct.
Okay, so
Oh, I thought
we're,
you said 73.
nope, that was in
Okay.
between. Yeah.
I must have heard something else.
Yeah,
Alrighty,
concurrence.
so
That's,
so the abstract will be changed, 33 is changed.
The voucher number 33?
The total for number 33 is changed.
Yes, the total for 33 is 197.21.
Okey doke.
So is the abstract still 30 through 58?
Well, when we take off the town of Ithaca for the Quio membership dues, then it drops. So we get, that was voucher 54. So then we'll now have 54, 55, 56, and 57 instead of 58.
Mm-hmm. Do we renumber or?
Are those renumbered yet?
no.
I
No,
have them renumbered, yes.
I didn't find that problem this afternoon.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so the final recorded one will have those corrected numbers.
Okay, I'll move the general fund vouchers 30 through 57 for 64,494.81.
There a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Not? Dennis?
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes,
Weisberg,
No.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Canyon,
Yes. Highway,
I have a general question. I don't know if it was answered, but in which abstract would the feral gas charge be found? Or is that something we're not paying this month? You
Oh,
know?
that feral gas charge, that was one where we were, just a minute, let me see if I can grab that and take a look. What was going on? What did I?
like, are you saying, Leslie, that you were looking for it and didn't find it any place? Is that-
Right.
Yeah.
It's on the charge card sheet,
Uh,
um,
But it didn't appear as a.
but I didn't find it.
Oh,
on-
you're looking, oh, I'm sorry, Leslie, you're looking at the Key Bank credit card, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that correct? The Key Bank credit card? Yeah,
Yeah.
when I was just talking about it, yeah, I didn't put those on this abstract yet. Cause I'm searching down those taxes and I wanted to get something right from the company for that feral gas, other than we're replacing that amount.
Okay, so we're
I
gonna
didn't
do it
put it
the
on
next-
this abstract. It'll be on at the next
Okay.
board. Anything for the credit card will be on for the next board meeting.
Perfect, okay. I'm glad I stopped looking for it. Um, So I move the highway fund vouchers 11 through 22 for $31,706.45. Second.
Ready to
That
vote?
was Pat that seconded again.
Pat seconded, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And go ahead with vote.
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes,
Weisberg, sorry,
Yes,
Woodworth.
Yes.
Gagnon.
Yes. And then the most complicated one, the water fund.
was there another voucher added to that? I remember one email coming across.
Yeah, there was. It was
Okay.
added late.
All right,
Yeah, so that was also the charges because the water district now has a credit card. So those needed to be put on the water district abstract. And so that was added this afternoon.
Yep, pulled from the key bank.
Yeah. Move the water district vouchers number 3 through 6 for $5,609.23.
I'll second it then.
Okay. Catherine seconded. Any discussion? Nope. Okay, Janice?
Connors,
Aye.
Hunter,
Yes,
Weisberg,
yes,
Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
Yes. Okay, now going back to the additions. It seems like only yesterday, but the annual reconsideration of what to do about the loader has come around again. We've essentially been buying a new loader every year, trading it in,
For $15,000.
more or less, yeah.
What do you mean more or less?
Well, it's not a given that it's going to be X amount. It's historically it's been about $15,000. And Laura can address, what it would be. So in other words, you have to take a look at it each time, see whether the deal you get on the trade-in plus the cost of the new one, is still a good idea. And I'd like to have Laura and Keith, if you'd like to. Keith here?
Yep.
Yeah. Speak to why it's still a good deal and why we ought to do it this time.
You want me to start talking, Keith? Well, you're on mute. You're on mute. It's okay. Okay, well, what we have here is, as Joel said, we're coming up for the where every year we've done this for the last 7 or 8 years, where we've gotten a new loader. We consider the loader to be a priority piece of equipment for our town. And what happened this year, and I just want you to know that it's not something that we just automatically do every year. It's something that we really sit down and analyze and take a look at the figures, take a look at the market, see what's going on to make sure that we're still getting, something that's good. And times have changed, and Keith can talk a lot about this too, about manufacturer prices and how equipment has gone up. I can tell you that in this particular case, the amount that they are going to give us for our loader is more than what we paid for it. That's how much the prices and everything on the equipment are going up. The other thing that I can say is that we are getting an OGS price on this. It is, we've gotten at a particular date, which I believe that date has already extended. The price has already gone up on this, but they have given us a price before the price increases, actual price increases. But even that went through one phase of increase. So we have a subtotal here. The new one was $191,000. They're going to give us $175,000 for the loader that we have. So if you take into consideration now, if we didn't do this and say we kept it for another year or two, one of the things we would have to do is we'd have to purchase another warranty on it. Another warranty on this machine right now is about $5,300, $5,300. We have to do that. Because you can't operate a piece of equipment like this without a good warranty on the engine and on the major parts of it. Okay, so by trading.
Can you
Excuse me?
hear me? Sorry, Laura, can I interrupt you?
You go ahead. This is a good thing. for-
Okay, you can hear me now, so.
Yeah,
So another thing that I would like to add that's due on this loader right now, we're getting ready to cross the 400-hour threshold of our service on it. And it's gonna need a full service, which is they're usually around $3,000 to do a loader. So that's another expense that we're getting ready to acquire on this loader. So that's going to bring us up to about $8,000 with the warranty information. I would strongly advise carrying a warranty of some sort on this newer equipment with the technology that's involved in these things. You know, we're into these new loaders. The older loaders, you don't have to really worry about it as much. They're pretty easy for our mechanics to work on, but some of this newer technology, really, you have to carry the software, costs thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to service these machines. So, you know, generally what we're looking at for a new loader, and I'm very agreeable to buying used, looking for good deals. But used equipment is coming in very, very, very high in this market right now. There's no availability for trucks, loaders. So it's basically, you know, you're getting what you get at the dealers. The used stuff is selling for almost as much as a new one, but with really, really high hours on them. And you got to remember that we're not buying automobiles, we're buying trucks and equipment that it works so if you buy a truck with 30,000 miles on it, that truck may have plowed a parking lot for 30,000 miles, which is a big difference than what you would buy a regular truck or something for. These vehicles have been really, anything in the like the 1-ton vehicles is they've been worked a lot. But as far as the loader goes, we're looking at about 10,000. If you were to take the 8,000 of the service and the warranty and put it back to what we're going to pay, we're looking for about 10,000 on the new loader. And usually I would say that, looking at this, I think it's really a grab for the town right now. And a lot of the bigger dealers are actually starting to steer away from this. I've seen Milton Cat has changed all their processes. Their service, their trade-in programs are not as good. Another one that I see doing it is Ford. Ford used to give us OGS pricing on stuff, and actually looking at these trucks now, they're not, they would rather, they can only supply so many trucks, so they're going to take the money off the street, which is paying more dollar, and they've got people lined up to buy work trucks. So that's kind of the shoe we're in right now. After COVID, it's been a real struggle. But I think if on the newer equipment, I think it's a really good time to buy if you can buy right. And this company that we're dealing with right now is still working with the OGS pricing. They're still representing that. I personally, I had different thoughts back and forth on it, but right now, and I think it should be watched very carefully. I think that in the years to come, this is going to change and this isn't going to be available for us. But I think right now, while it's on the table, I think it would be probably wise for the town to go after it. But I think it'll change.
Laura, do we have to move the motion to transfer the money first or approve it?
Yes.
first? Okay.
we need to,
If this
that
is
was what
something-
Stephanie was about to say, is that we have to identify the funding sources, and
Yeah.
perhaps you could speak to that, Laura.
On the resolution, it does show, the $18,170 paid from the machinery contractual line, which that amount is in there. But what we're suggesting, we're suggesting from a financial end is that we have money that is still in a couple of our line items that we didn't spend. For instance, one of those line items is the New York State retirement line. So we had money left over there from New York State retirement. We know that we just pay that once a year. So we know that money's sitting there. And we have money left in our workers' compensation. So a good place in my thoughts is to take this money that we have in those two accounts, move it over into the machinery contractual line and use that money to make this purchase and get back into this contract. Then we don't have to affect the fund balance with this. We don't have to go into our machinery line, which you never know what's going to happen as the year goes on. And it might just be a good place to transfer fund from. Plus, it does leave some in those line items too that we can transfer around and use for other things as they come up, if they come up for the town. So I would say that we transfer the money first, if you're in agreement with that, the transfer that budget amount, and then go for the resolution for the loader contract.
Jan, could you screen share that? Because it got changed practically at showtime, so I'll make sure that we know what we're passing.
You're asking for the budget transfer?
Yes. Yeah, you noticed that the
One second.
I move.
so this is what would be actually resolving here.
And what is the difference? What is
The
it?
difference is in the resolve. The resolve is incorrect in the earlier version. It's got us moving money to the youth group.
Supposed to be 9,085 instead of 916.
Oh, I don't have, I mean, this I think is correct. I mean,
Okay, I mean, you must have printed it pretty
It's
close.
correct. Yes, it looks
Yeah.
correct.
tell
Anyway,
me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Um,
and this is what's, well, why not move it? The resolution reads, resolved that the town board approves the transfer of $9,085 from the workers' compensation line, DA 9,040.800, and $9,085 from the New York State retirement line, DA. It should be, DA 9,010.800 to the machinery contractor line, DA 5130.400, which is also reflected in the table below. So I moved that.
I'll second it.
Okay.
When did the table get put out? When
The
did that-
table was correct from earlier. It was only the resolved language that was wrong. You just fix it so that they correspond.
When did this get put into the agenda?
Well, this one.
Well, when did it get, this morning maybe?
I don't think so.
Anyway, it was,
Says 4:21 p.m. on.
I'd like to get
There
an
you go.
email notice when things are changed. Yeah.
well,
Well, Laura had
happened-
sent out the
what
email
happened
with the
here was-
resolutions.
Figures are correct, but some, in the past, they have been changed. And,
Yeah.
half an hour before the meeting, I'm usually putting my boots on.
yes,
I'm
I
doing
understand.
things. I don't have time
Me
to-
too. It's
Okay,
just that I was reviewing this over dinner and I noticed that the resolve was incorrect. Janice must have just used the template from the
okay, mine
previous
is fine.
motion.
Mine is correct.
Well, you must have printed it after I called her and asked about it.
I
And
don't know.
I spoke to Laura and we said, fix it. So, it's fixed now so that we have it correct, which is why I asked to make sure we. After 4 o'clock.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, the point
I
being,
mean,
we make sure.
For
that
the
we-
record, Laura
right
did
thing.
send out the email with the resolutions in it. All I do is I take the resolutions that she sends and I plop them into a formal letterhead.
I wasn't thinking that you necessarily did it. I was pointing my finger at Joel.
No,
So-
it's, and I'm just
Joel
trying,
found it.
I just would
Just
like, I
trying
would
to,
just,
you know,
I'm only asking that I get some kind of a trigger that lets me say, know that something has been changed, so I don't come here and find out I have outdated material, that's all.
Yes, yes,
That's
yes.
all.
And that normally would be the case, except that it found it so late that there was no way.
Well, then bring it here and say, this is wrong, we're gonna change this.
That's what I just did, and that's why I asked Janet to
Well,
screen
I'm-
share it, okay?
Well, I don't think it's real, I don't feel like I'm asking for a lot. That's all.
Nor is it good,
You're making an impossible question.
nor is it good for the, anybody in the community who actually, I mean, the purpose of having this agenda and available is that members of the residents can look at it and know what's on.
Absolutely,
That's even worse if we're screwing around with residents.
yeah, I understand, and I can.
But we
and
have a
I'm-
motion on the
and I'm
floor, so it can be
sympathetic.
voted.
Yes,
Okay.
if you want to talk about it more,
So
we're
we
ready to
need
go.
to just vote.
Yeah, well, I'm ready if you want, if you're ready. Go ahead, Janice.
Connors,
Yes,
Hunter,
Yes, yes,
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
yes,
Gagnon.
Yes. Okay. Now, if you could screen share the authorizing resolution that uses the money we just
I
moved,
can't read a thing that's on the screen. It's totally useless.
well,
I can't read a thing that's on the screen. It's totally useless.
oh, yeah.
yeah, I
I
can't
can
really.
make it bigger.
Well, yeah, you could.
Yeah, that'd be
There you
good.
go.
How's that?
You right now?
Barely some of it.
So let's go through this, because I want to make, Ted pointed out there were some typos. You know, in the title, for instance, it's not fro, but for. I couldn't make these changes because it was, I would have fixed typos like that, but it was in a non-editable form.
Oh,
Gotta go in through the work drive.
so it's when
Yeah, but I
it
couldn't,
got changed.
where was it in work drive?
It's in the resolutions folder.
Oh. Yeah? In the resolutions. folder. I didn't know where to look. It wasn't in the meetings folder. Okay. So whereas the highway department has entered into agreements over the last 7 years for the annual replacement of the loader, should say comma, and whereas the loader is a priority piece of equipment that must be in reliable condition from year to year, to service winter emergencies, comma, and whereas an analysis has been done to be certain that the price of replacing the loader each year is cost effective for the town, and it has been determined that the replacement in 2003 will be comparable to a long-standing ownership and cost effective, considering the elimination of maintenance costs and associated purchase of an extended warranty, comma, and no, not now, therefore, I should say, actually, after that warranty. Resolved that the town board gives permission to the highway superintendent to enter into the, I guess, the sales contracts, okay, with Alpha Equipment for the replacement of the loader. The amount of the transaction will be $18,170, which will be paid for out of the machinery contractual line, DA 5130.400.
I'll second that.
I guess I moved it then.
You read it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Any discussion? Okay. Janice?
Connors,
Yes,
Hunter,
yes,
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
yes.
Gagnon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
that's it though, guys,
Yeah, you're right.
that's it.
There's more, but we'll get to it later, but. Possible letter of support for New York State Council on the Arts grant application to create a webpage celebrating Danby's rural character. This is a proposal from Rhonda, which she sent to us back in mid-January, I think. And if it's going to happen, the deadline for application is mid-February, so it'd have to come up tonight or it wouldn't get dealt with at all. So I put it on here as something we might want to consider doing. Even though there's some ambiguity about who does what in order to make it happen. And maybe Rhonda, you can speak to that because the basic idea was which was hers, was to create a web page where we would ask, solicit people's artistic contributions to describing or highlighting features of our rural characters.
Sorry.
So let me just explain something. If, let's say that someone was proposing a project at Buttermilk Falls State Park, what would happen normally is that the request would go to Fred Bond, who is the regional director, and it would go to Jim Brody, the director of the park, and everybody would sit down and they would talk about it and ask questions and get answers and make plans, and then it would go to the state, maybe even to be approved. We have done, despite the fact that I actually emailed Leslie for kind of an initial comment way back in, I think, December, I have heard nothing from any of you, not a thing, not even a hi, how are you? And so I don't have any answers. You have questions, I have questions. And we have not met, we have not made any plans, we have not talked about, well, what if, and who's going to do this, and have some sort of a program plan or anything. There's been nothing done. And the application is due on the 16th. This is crazy.
Rhonda, I understood that you wanted a letter that we approved, that would be something fine that you were interested in doing.
Right. Right. I mean, the request was for a letter of support. And she said there's no way this would work unless we had a letter of support from the town board and probably the CAC as well. And so the question had to do with what are we supporting with our letter? And to me, that was a question of, if you were to apply for this funding, which is what we're essentially looking to have happen, what would you be requesting? In other words, how does this, if the money is granted in order to create a web page and solicit artist participation, who's going to do that? Is it going to be you? And if so, it should be part of the grant application. You'd fund yourself for doing it.
That's my question too. Who is going to do that? And so we have not discussed any of this. We haven't made any plans. So normally you would have a plan that would say, okay, so we will, we agree that so-and-so is going to do this and so-and-so is going to do that and all of these things. And we haven't even discussed it.
If you send us a request for a letter of support, then we need to know what we're supporting. If that's not what your request was, that doesn't make sense. Are you asking for us a letter of support?
Yes, I'm asking you for a letter of support, but we have a lot of issues that have to be covered before I can answer any questions. You have questions, I have questions. We should have had a meeting. We have had no meeting. So how can I answer your questions?
Well, the question is, if you're asking us for a letter of support, then you should be specific about what we're supporting.
Yeah, what I'm hearing.
I mean, I wrote you out 2 pages of an idea. And now you're coming to me with questions. And I'm saying I don't have the answers because the town board and I have not discussed any of this.
Well, I wasn't expecting that we would. I guess it's what we're all saying here.
Okay, well, then I can't answer your questions.
Okay, because the way I received this and what I thought we were dealing with was that you had this great idea and we're going to apply for money to implement it. And you were looking for a letter of support from the town board and from the CAC. Nowhere in that presentation or floating of ideas was there any suggestion that the town and its resources would be in any way involved in implementing this, other than perhaps providing a place for the result to be added to the website. And so,
Okay,
you know,
but we have not discussed anything. I
Well-
may agree with you. I may say, that sounds great to me, but we haven't discussed any of this. So there can be no assumptions on anyone's part that so-and-so is going to do this, and this is going to happen, and that's going to happen. We have discussed none of this.
well, you could say that there would need to have been a proposal to discuss. In other words, and that's why my questions were, this was your baby, so to speak. You had this idea, it sounds like a very interesting idea, that we might be, willing to support with a letter. But the question I had was, what is it that we're supporting? What does this proposal look
Then
like?
why did you wait until tonight to ask me that? When I made the original proposal to Leslie way back in December and heard nothing from her. And then I also proposed it to the CAC, and Jonathan and Corbett said they wanted something laid out.
Yeah,
And so I laid it out in 2 pages of type, and Jonathan said, well, I'll wait to see what the application says, which is kind of silly because they're, this is thinking maybe there's going to be a paper application or something, and all NISCA applications are done via submittal.
I want to apologize because I do remember your letter, and it came on the heels of what I took to be sort of a sarcastic response to the town giving money to the seniors. And I actually thought that what you were writing was sort of if you're going to give money to the seniors, how about this? I mean, I seriously thought it was a joke. So I apologize, but that's what I thought it was. It was right after, there was you made some comment about.
Okay, but the thing
senior
is
thing.
that
So,
I heard
it's too
nothing
late.
from any of you. If any of you had any questions or anything and wanted to discuss this, then way back when I wrote the 2 pages, you should have said, well, we have some questions. Let's get together and discuss this. But you didn't. And I sat there, you said nothing. And I sat there thinking, okay, they're not interested. And I went on with my life.
okay.
I mean, I've already applied for another NISCA grant. I did the whole application for another NISCA grant. I talked to Robin Schwartz and I said, well, we might not make this application date for this proposal that I submitted to the town because they're not doing anything, but they may come back to me at a later date. And the person who runs this particular proposal is making the decision and said that she would not even look at an application without some sort of a support, a letter of support. And she suggested to me that I go to Robin and talk to her about another community grant that the county has, which is less money, but it might accomplish what we eventually, if you do decide you want to discuss it, what we would eventually be doing. But at this point in time, we haven't even begun to discuss the the ins and outs of the whole thing. Who's going to do this? How are we going to do this? When are we going to do this?
Yeah, well, let me say that what I was trying to avoid was spending a lot of time at this meeting doing what we're doing. You know, it would have to have been done outside of the meeting probably, you know, to have the discussion
Yeah.
about if there had even been a recognized need to do that, because it didn't seem to me that we had that need, that what I was expecting was a proposal from you that we would then endorse with a letter. Since that hasn't happened, it probably can't happen in a timely way. I think we just have to say this is off the table and move on.
Okay.
Nice thought, but not happening. Okay, we have also a potential provider of IT services who is available to meet with us tomorrow, right, Catherine?
Okay, but I would not call it a potential provider. I would say it is another provider who's offering to look at what we have and tell us what they think. And that's what it is, not, there's no decisioning happening.
No, but I mean, the reason we're even hearing from them is because we might consider.
As we might with many.
Yeah, sure. I mean, not
That's
that they have any kind of special status in the process here, but this is one
Right.
vendor that we
Right.
have lined up to meet with, what, tomorrow at 10, is that right?
Yes.
So because more than, we might have a board quorum there, in order to be consistent with open meetings law, I'm proposing that we could call it a special meeting, and anybody is welcome to watch if they'd like. There will be no privilege of the floor. It's just, we're meeting with this vendor, and the public should know it's a meeting. The board will be there. No decisions are expected to happen at this, but we will be, in a sense, conducting town business.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna assume that this will include, say, a visit to see what all the equipment that the town currently has in place, which would include the highway department.
Right.
I'm offering to record. I mean, I've got a recorder that I could
Take with you.
with me, for people who can then listen to it.
Okay, good idea.
So, I mean, I think it's gonna be hard to do, you know,
Take
if the
notes.
person comes in here and goes into different rooms to see what equipment we have, it's a little difficult.
Right.
Sure.
That's a whole lot of
So-
people going in and.
Right, that sounds like
Not a meeting.
sounds like a plan.
We're not, you know, it's, you know, we might ask some questions, but most of it is the person giving us, maybe an
Information.
estimate
Yeah.
of how, you know, and ideas of what they would do,
Mhm. Yeah.
to improve what we have.
Right.
That's,
So,
Can I ask if there's a charge for their estimate?
not, I don't think for this,
I didn't understand
No.
you, sorry.
well,
a charge for this estimate.
I
No,
don't know.
No,
so we're getting the same kind of evaluation that SET did charge us for.
Yes, but we have a month-to-month relationship with FTT at the time, and that was, part of their contract. Yeah, so it was a visit, a contract visit.
Yeah,
This is not.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I move we have a special meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. to meet with this purveyor. And we meet what here?
I'll second it.
No, actually, he wants to go to the highway first.
We start at highway? Okay, so we meet at 10 at the highway.
I wonder what kind of vehicle they have.
I already warned him. Is the road frozen at the
Not supposed to.
highway tomorrow morning, do you think, Laura and Keith?
Hopefully.
Not
Keith?
supposed to.
I
Keith,
just touched my car. Maybe I'll park and walk. You know.
Yeah. I can always get it dirty going over the
there'll be
hill.
somebody there. There'll be somebody here. Can you have to unmute Keith?
Yeah, it wasn't
So
a
you'll be
question
there at
about
10
whether you.
o'clock?
Can't hear you, Keith. You're muted.
Okay, am I here now?
Yeah.
Yes.
There we go. All right. What was the question? I'm sorry.
It's a silly question, I will say, but because the road is so muddy, I was kind of hoping it still might be frozen tomorrow morning, not be so muddy.
If it's below say 25 degrees, it'll be good and frozen, but some unfortunately what happened, we're sharing our salt barn with the state, and one of their trucks probably maybe came in and somebody left their spreader on, and when you do that on a dirt road, it makes chaos. So, but we've talked to people about it, and we're trying to clean it up, so.
And the dirt, the gravel roads are generally kind of in mud season when it's above freezing anyway. And
Yep.
it might be like that as it was this evening coming over the hill,
Yeah.
tomorrow morning as well.
Well, I
It's better than ice where you can slide on.
Yeah, you at least you don't slide off it.
I
don't
warned,
know.
I warned this person that the last time it was, and this person says he lives in the woods and he lives on, has boots and he goes to a lot of places like that. So
Yeah.
never mind. It was just
Right.
a Mox Nick's question and not, I don't mean to be a troublemaker about anything. I love the highway.
So the motion is to begin highway at 10 a.m. with a special
Okay,
meeting. And who seconded
I
it?
think I seconded
Okay,
it.
Leslie seconded it.
If I didn't, I am now.
Yeah.
You did.
Any comment besides the vote? No. Okay, Janice?
Connors,
Aye.
Hunter,
I,
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
yes,
Gagnon.
Yes. All right, now we drop down to the Chamber of Commerce has been doing outreach meetings at different communities, and they proposed doing one here. And the first approached us about doing one in March, but then Sarah Arden, who heads the chamber, said, well, February 28th is opened up. And I looked at the town website calendar and saw that the library was open during the proposed time. So I approached the library folks and asked them, would it be a problem if we had that happening at the same time? And they get back to say, no problem. So I told Sarah, probably no problem, but I need to get board authorization for use of the room. And then I just discovered this morning that also scheduled is the youth group activity on the afternoon of February 28th. Now, the window that she gave me was noon to 4. Youth groups are what, 3 or 3:30 something?
3:30. Yeah, I can
3:30.
interject. David has his hand up as well. We spoke about this afternoon after we spoke, Joel. The youth program is 3:30 to 5:30, so the room is available between 12 and 3:30.
So if that's enough of a window for them, and I suspect it might be, February 28th would work. If not, then the alternative would be March. I forget what the date you gave me. Do you remember, David?
I think that other date didn't work for them and it didn't work for them. That's why they changed to this date.
Or was it? Because I thought it was a matter, she said, well, we've got something that will be a little bit sooner, but the other one didn't work anyway.
Could you talk about what is the purpose? Why?
Yeah, why
you
don't
want to-
I let David speak to that? Because
Okay.
Yeah, so I spoke to Sarah when they were opening the new home of the Chamber of Commerce, and mentioned that they've been putting on these outreach meetings. They started last year in different communities, and it's a chance to bring together the business community of a town or village and kind of do some community visioning type work, do some brainstorming about what is important to the business community, what they see as barriers, what they see as things that would be helpful, and kind of provide a forum for that kind of discussion among business owners and people in the business community, basically. So they were really well received in the few towns that they did last year. When Sarah mentioned this to me, I thought it sounded like an excellent idea and something that I would be happy to sponsor as the planning department. because, you know, it's always great for us to have those kinds of discussions, and it's part of what I'm hoping we'll do with the beginning of this year when we get a grant consultant on, is having more conversations about what the community wants and needs and wants to see. So to me, it sounded like something that would fit into that really well. And even though we don't have a lot of retail business, there was a thread last year on the Danby community Facebook page that put together a huge list of businesses. We actually have a lot of businesses in Danby, and it's a lot of people, you know, working from home, doing all kinds of interesting things. And it's kind of an opportunity to shine a little light on that as well. But it seems like a great idea to me.
Yeah, so there, they or somebody, there's gonna be an invitation for people
Yes.
who have businesses, a public, okay.
Yep, and they'd love to have town board members as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
I actually like that idea a lot.
I did too.
I would like to
I warmed
move,
to it right away.
I'd like to move that we authorize that the Chamber of Commerce can use the town hall for such meeting on February 28th.
You know, seconded. Any further discussion? So David, so I was going to double it up with a motion and say if that doesn't work for them, they could do the date in March, but you're saying the date in March didn't work for them
Right.
anyway.
Right.
That was my understanding. I mean, if you want to approve that as well. I don't know if you need to approve specific dates or if you want to give a blanket approval for a meeting this spring at a time that works for the space. We could do that as well.
That might be the safer course, to authorize the Chamber of Commerce to have a meeting here in this meeting room at a time when the room is available and it works for them too.
Is that a friendly amendment?
That's what, yeah, it's kind of suggesting.
I'll second that.
Mhm.
Friendly
You
amendment.
accept it, you mean? It's your motion.
Well, I'm seconding. Well, you changed it.
Yeah,
Then we're taking the thing out about February 28th.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's when we expect it will probably happen, but if for some reason it doesn't work for the February 20th, we can find another date that does work without having to come back.
I mean, it might, you know, depending on what kind of businesses that people are looking to target. I mean, February might be a good sort of downtime.
Yeah, for lots of folks. It's
Instead
not-
of in the
it's a-
spring.
Yeah, right.
Hope it works out.
Mhm.
I guess I'm gonna have to say that when didn't think a lot about it till had mentioned the idea about using the town hall for business rather than government and community. And I do know that chambers of commerce they're organizations that solicit membership, and it's not free to members. And you know, maybe could be slightly different. And David, if you have something to say to me that would clear that up, but I have seen chambers of commerce usually want one member of each kind of business, and then they want to, I'm sorry, I'm going to say this. It's just, I'm going to just say it.
Go ahead.
What they usually do is they try to sell their wares to each other, and that's how they build up. So I'm not a real huge fan of them, but and I don't know whether we should be supporting that, but that's my say. And
Yeah.
leave it to you guys to talk about it a little more.
Do we have any guidelines for use of the space?
Yeah, we do.
Yes, we do. Yeah, basically, the community council and its programs are authorized to use the space. The youth commission was granted specific permission to use the space. Anybody else has to get permission from the board to use the space.
So I guess what I mean are there guidelines for when the board would approve or not approve that? What if someone wanted to have a Tupperware party here?
Or do what?
A Tupperware party, would we approve that?
I don't know. What we couldn't do was agree on an overall policy that would govern who could use it. So we left it at they'd have to ask, and we'd decide whether we want to let them.
Yeah. I mean, I sympathize and agree with some of what you're saying. I also see it as an opportunity for people to get together, which hasn't happened very
Right.
much. I mean, look.
I know, I agree with
I mean,
that.
people need to be interested, and we talk about trying to, help with the economy and get people businesses and a market across the street. It just might be, it might be helpful for business people in Danby to have an event.
Well, the
where
other
they can
part-
come together.
Yeah, and the part I do like the idea of people who might then decide if they're there, they might say, oh, wow, you mean there can be business in Danby? That's the part that's okay with me.
Yeah,
Maybe I could start it. Maybe I could start a business
Yeah.
in Danby.
yeah,
That part,
yeah,
if it encourages people to do
yeah,
business and employ people, et cetera, then
yeah.
that part is okay with me. And
And that's a lot of what, and that's a lot of what this chamber does, is help to support and nurture businesses, and having them, try to do some of that in Danby would be, I think, mostly to our benefit.
Yeah.
David has his hand back up.
Yeah. I just thought, Catherine, I could address one thing that you said, which is that chambers of commerce are generally membership organizations, and the Tompkins County Chamber is, but it is a nonprofit. It's a 501c something. I don't know which number, nonprofit, and they would not require people to be members of the chamber to participate in the meeting. It's not a members only meeting. It's a meeting for the community.
Yeah, I'd have much more of a problem if there were membership only meetings,
No.
but that's not what's being proposed.
Good.
Okay, we ready to vote?
Yeah.
Okay, Janice?
Connors,
I,
Hunter,
I,
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
yes,
Gagnon.
Yes. Okay. There was a unfortunate accident with the pickup truck. Keith was driving it, and he managed to total it without losing his own life in the process. Although it got
Excuse me.
a little sore though. We just agreed to buy a pickup truck a month ago.
right.
And here we are in a situation of the other pickup truckers we're not planning on replacing, we just lost. So, because we just went through the whole process, identifying what we need and how to, where to source it and what kind of deal we could get, we have an opportunity to double down, so to speak, given that we've lost it. So, is that Laura coughing here?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. I'll put it on mute time. All of a sudden it just kind of came on. I think I started coughing like that when Keith's accident was mentioned. And God, that he was all right. Thank you, Lord, that he was okay.
So, so Keith and Laura have shared, how we might be able to pay for this thing, and I will only take a few minutes to recap what's been done here to set the groundwork for why we might be willing to entertain this.
Yeah, well, of course, we immediately called the insurance company. And so the insurance company has a settlement for us. They will give us net the deductible and everything else involved, $30,503 for the pickup that was lost. Okay. So there's $30,503 for that. Also, Jack called the salvage yards, like all the salvage yards within 70 miles of where the pickup is located right now. He was able to find one called Ambrosius Auto Parts, and they've offered $4,000 for the pickup that got destroyed. So there's some extra money right there. And oh, Keith's back on now. I see he's
Yep,
on mute.
yep.
So we'll start talking about, we've done the procurement. It's just so close to when we ordered the last one. So we've done the procurement, and Keith had said, he'd like to have a pickup, the same, another one exactly the same of what he ordered. We've gone through getting price quotes on them. This is a great quote. That dealer, Van Bortle Ford, is going to still honor the price before the manufactured increase. The second phase of that for the 2023. So we're able to order another one kind of exactly like that. And Keith can tell you more about that, exactly like that for the same price. So financially, where we're at with it is that after the insurance and the amount that we'll get for the old truck, that leaves a remainder of $15,997 that we would have to pay out to get another new truck. We're suggesting we just take that from the fund balance of the highway. It was completely unexpected. We could take some, like I've said before, from the New York State retirement line or the workers' comp line. There's some in there. Should we hang on to that just to see what's going to happen throughout the year? If we don't use it, that'll roll back into the fund balance. But we're just suggesting the $15,997 from the fund balance to cover the rest of that and asking for your permission to order that other truck. And Keith, I'll be quiet now and let you talk.
Okay, so I'd like to start by saying sorry that we had the extra expense for sorry that we have another new expense for a new truck. That being my fault. So I'm sorry for that, but anyways, but I wanted to say that when we're looking for these trucks, once again, we're looking at new trucks again. And we're pricing out, again, we're the same with the other truck that we were looking at. We're pricing between Ford, Dodge, Chevrolet, whatever is out there, and the availability. And availability is really slim on these work trucks. Again, that we just can't stress that. You can't just go to the lot and buy one of these trucks. It's 6 months out. And that's if they'll fulfill our order. We're looking for an okay to go forward with this, but we're still not even getting 100% of a firm answer that we're going to have these trucks. We're just, they're thinking that they can get them from Ford, so we're trying to move forward with them. We just need the commitment with them, and we're pricing out used. Again, if these trucks are right around 40, I think they were 49,000. Was that correct, Laura? Right around there.
Yes.
So again, I would be happy to show some of the quotes. I don't have them on the computer, but I would be very happy to show all the quotes that we've done on used vehicles. You can find this stuff on Auctions International, cars.com, trucks.com. There's a lot of different stuff out there on the computers where you can find them, talking with the dealers. And it's just the used stuff is really coming in. It's coming in where these things have 30,000 miles, they're 2 years old, and they want, by the time you're done with the fees and stuff, it's right around 40 something thousand, 43,000 or something with the fees on a used one. And again, this, if you find something with really, really low miles on it, you really have to be careful. It's a work truck, and I want to remind people that it's not a daily use vehicle. These things are built to pull something, plow. They're out in the salt all the time. They're very, 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 very high maintenance vehicles, and we have to take that into consideration when we're buying these trucks.
So the only question I had is, we're talking about attacking the fund balance to fund it. I think we should be thinking in terms of putting that money back you know, if that were part of the budget process this last year, you know, we'd be looking at almost 1% to make that back up. And that's gonna come around again, you know, when we go to, you know, otherwise we're running the fund balance down.
Except we do remember that you had given us fund balance from other places, other towns, and ours is way above those.
Yeah, which is not to say that we don't have the money, but we are, you know, spending it down.
Which is better than holding in the bank when we need it.
Laura.
I can say, like I said, we have more money. Probably about 10,000 sitting in those other accounts right now that I was talking about, just the two of them. The workers' comp and the New York State retirement, and that's after funding the loader program. So we have money there. Can also say it's been a really great winter for us as far as our salary lines go. Of course, we don't know what's going to come down the pipe further, but you know, things are looking good as of right now. I know it's only the first month, so it doesn't necessarily mean that we won't be adding to the fund balance. But that 10,000 right there will be sitting there.
Yeah, so we may end up with it being added to the fund balance.
Now we could, if you wanted to move it now, we could and expend it. Or you could put it in the fund balance, or you could go to the fund balance and somewhere down the road, say in the next 6 months, 5 months, so we get a 6-month period, take a look at it again, see where everything is going, and consider, you know, moving other money then as well. So just a thought. I was just thinking fund balance for now, because it's so early in the year. Doesn't necessarily, it's really going to come from the fund balance, but it's so early in the year. If we do it and we keep an eye on what is actually happening, we can move some and see where it is and be a little bit more secure as we get in through the year.
I assume we have to move the resolution for the selling the old truck first? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I move that resolution.
Which I haven't seen, but
It's a approval by the town board to allow the highway superintendent to sell the destroyed
For $4,000.
Chevy Silverado pickup truck.
shopping.
Less 500 for the towing, so it's, we end up net $3,500 for a destroyed truck.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Well, we're not more because we have the insurance payout too, which is
Yeah,
30,000 plus.
So somebody second that?
Yeah. So we.
I'll second that.
Okay, so that motion has been seconded to authorize the sale of the destroyed or, you know, total truck to this salvage yard.
Where is that resolution?
What's that?
Where is that?
Laura sent it out in an email? Laura sent it in an email, that's when I got it.
Yeah,
Email.
yeah, I missed it.
Today?
I knew it was coming, but I didn't see it.
Yes, and I think Janice has it up there too.
There we go.
I'm not sure I'm seeing that email.
Well, I mean, it should be right in front of you now.
There were so many emails.
I don't think I sent it to you. That's terrible. I know. I'm so sorry about that. I don't think I had your name in my queue there. I'm sorry. I'll be better about getting it to you.
Yeah.
For sure.
You know, the annoying thing here, Laura, is getting this at the, 2 hours before the meeting.
I know.
And this has happened multiple times. with
Yeah.
the,
I mean, it does happen.
Sometimes it's necessary, but this is not something that happened yesterday. There could and should have been more opportunity to,
Well, we did have, actually, it did happen, we just got this quote from them this morning.
Okay.
So these things take time to get it in. That's why you didn't get it before then. But this got emailed to us this morning.
Yeah. And I will say that this is not my first exposure to this. I mean, I was made aware when the crash happened that we
Right.
lost the truck.
Right,
And Laura and Keith have been briefing
Right.
me on what they were looking into to
yeah.
deal with it. So, motion was made in second. Any further discussion on that one? Okay, Janice? Now you're muted. There you go.
There. I couldn't find my doohickey. Anyway, Connors,
Aye.
Hunter,
Aye.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
Yes. Okay. So then there's another resolution, I take it, authorizing the, replacement and indicating where the money's gonna come from.
Yeah.
Okay. And here,
Resolution to order a new pickup truck. I move that resolution.
okay, can we take a minute to look at it and see whether it reads okay?
You can doctor it up. I know, Joel, you put the ends and stuff in there.
Yeah. I did
I
that.
could just,
So
yeah,
it's gotta change things.
yeah, the ants, right?
So is Keith feeling okay?
Yep, I'm feeling fine, thank you.
You should talk to Jonathan. He ran off the same road one day.
Yeah, it's a horrible thing, but
Yeah.
I'm doing fine, thank you, though.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna take issue with you saying it was your fault.
Yeah, what's
It was the ice's fault.
I'm serious.
It's funny, Jonathan said it wasn't his fault.
There you go.
I haven't been off the road in 30 years, but
Yeah.
you never know. You
Dangerous
learn
road.
from it.
Yeah,
Okay. This reads okay to me.
yeah, I thought
So
so.
was it moved in second?
It was moved.
It was moved. We did a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, Leslie seconds it. Any discussion
I didn't move.
further? No, okay, Janice?
Connors,
Aye.
Hunter,
Aye.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
Yes. So let's hope you get it before July.
Thank you.
That would be good.
Yeah,
He's driving his own vehicle around him.
yeah. If you see a minivan around town.
And Jack does, too. We drive our own cars.
Get that guy a bicycle. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
A motorcycle, go around on motorcycles.
It was.
All right,
Okay.
next up is the fire tax exemption local law. And we have the text of it. We actually don't have a resolution approval, though it did not say anything more than we approved about the law as drafted. So I move that we do so.
Second.
Does anybody want to look at it? What it looks like? We already look at it ahead of time. Yeah, okay,
What number local law would this be?
good question. Do we do any other local laws yet?
We did the code law. So this will be number 2.
Number 2?
Yeah.
2. Any discussion? Are we ready?
Ready.
We're ready. Janice?
Connors,
Aye.
Weisberg.
I think that was for me.
I just skipped right over Hunter. See, okay. It's fair play for everybody. I can screw up everybody's name. Connors said aye. Hunter,
Aye.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
Yes. All right. Discussion of zoning laws that relates to housing rentals. Here, the issue was, of course, brought to the fore by the controversy over the tourist home proposal for Beardsley Lane, but what it did was kind of highlight, I guess I would say, the state of our current regulations regarding how we deal with rentals at all. And this is something we started to look into. David created a committee. last year, but I thought it's an opportune time for us to sort of weigh in on how this gets approached. But I found the whole landscape a little bit confusing, and I asked David to prepare, basically a roadmap, a tabular way of looking at what the landscape currently is. And if you don't mind, I'd like to have David review that with us. So if you would, David.
Yeah, I'm happy to go through it. Would you rather that I do it from my desk or come into the room? I'm comfortable either way.
It's better if you're here because it's kind of blurred when we hear you from over there.
In light of how well your mic is working, the trouble is, it's hard for you to screen share from here, is it, or is it?
Oh, that's not a problem. I'll be right there.
Okay. It was the code.
Slides, 8 slides.
The what?
He has slides, 8 slides.
No, she's asking
She said,
what
what
was
was
local
what
law
was
number
number
one.
one?
It was
It was the code enabling law.
Oh, right. Yep, no, you're right.
I didn't think about if I could bring a laptop in.
I got
maybe.
You can sit at the table.
Oh, not the
Yeah.
So that's what the fun is.
There we go.
Oh.
You hear me all right? Excellent. All right, let's share this application and go full screen. All right.
The only way to get us out of the picture so we can see the whole thing, because you're cutting off the right-hand part of it.
Yeah, let's see.
How do we do that?
Oh, that one. Give me.
That might be, and that's me because I was using
Is
the,
that how you do it? Click on the minus?
really helpful.
All right. Yep. So I wanted to put together a little bit of help for understanding what our current rules are for long and short-term rental housing. So the first piece of this is that the town of Danby does not have any restrictions on rental housing. Rental housing is allowed everywhere. The limits that we have are the number of dwellings you can have on a lot and the number of unrelated occupants that can live in a dwelling. And we have a definition of family that's a very flexible definition of family that includes single people, people who live together who act kind of like a family but aren't related. A whole range of things are included in there. When it comes to short-term rentals, things like Airbnb or VRBO, the current state of things is that if you want to buy a house as an investor, buy 10 houses, buy 50 houses, and rent them out full-time on Airbnb, 365 days a year to a different person every single day, that is allowed in every zone in the town, on every lot.
So to
For a whole
that,
dwelling.
The only thing that's not covered in that is the things that are happening that are not in dwelling.
Correct. So there's two things that are not covered in that, which is renting things that are not dwellings and renting dwelling part of a dwelling. So renting part of a dwelling is a tourist home. It's when somebody lives there, but they're also renting out rooms in that dwelling. Or renting something that's not a dwelling, like a hotel or a motel or a boarding home, is also defined separate use.
Or a tent.
Renting a tent is not a defined use. It's not something we have anywhere in the code. And we had talked about wanting to make a way for people to do things like rent out an Airstream or yurts or tree houses or
snow caves or whatever, we hear from people all the time that they have creative ideas of things they could do on their property that would help them pay their property taxes and their mortgage and things like that. And there was a general feeling that that would be okay. And we were planning to come up with a law last year, and a bunch of other things came before the town board and didn't seem like a priority or a good time to consider such a hot button issue. And I kind of let it slide. And it's on my list for this year to deal with reconstituting that.
Evidently, it's an issue for Newfield, because I just saw that they are contemplating a moratorium.
On campgrounds.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Ithaca just passed a law. Did they? Yeah. Town over city? Good question. I think it's town. Makes sense.
Yeah, so there's a growing number of places that have laws that do deal with it specifically. What has come up that that people have had questions that I issued a determination on is what the town has long defined as a tourist home. The tourist home is allowed in the low density residential, rural 2, rural 1, and high priority preservation zones. With 10 or fewer beds, it's allowed in commercial A. With more than 10 beds, it can be allowed in commercial B and C, and also allowed in hamlet neighborhood.
Okay, so how many, you want us to wait?
No, go ahead. I'm here for you.
So, I mean, that stuff there, I mean, it's allowed in low density, rural, HPP.
Yeah.
And then it goes to commercial A, you can have 10 or fewer beds. Is there a number of beds in the first line?
No.
You can have 20 beds.
There is no limit in the law on how many beds you can have.
Commercial C, or.
Yeah, you were in commercial zone.
Commercial A.
Yeah, you're
you
more,
can't have more than 10.
yeah, you're more
Correct.
constrained in the commercial zone than you are in a non-commercial
But
zone.
in a low density residential right now, you could have.
There's no constraint. Right,
Yes.
yeah, it doesn't make any, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
the reasoning behind that?
This has been the law for decades. Now, I'll get to in a second, but there is some rational reasoning behind the 10 distinction. But as far as why there wasn't a specific limit put on the other zones,
I could shed a little bit of light on why it was in consideration in the commercial zone, because that was sort of dealt with in isolation.
mhm,
And we were trying to just, it was in conjunction with what's okay in A, which is, the closest to the hamlet center where there's the most impacts versus B and C, which are more high impact commercial zones. So it's an oversight at that time that we
Right.
didn't even realize that, outside of the commercial zones, there were no constraints at all.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, this anomaly is just sort of basically a historical artifact.
So it helps to understand that the town only has 2 definitions for places that provide accommodation on a transient basis. The 2 definitions are tourist home and hotel, motel, boarding home. It's all one thing. Hotel, motel, boarding home. It's one definition that covers all of those. Both of those can include a bed and breakfast, with the difference being a bed and breakfast that is also a residence is a tourist home. A bed and breakfast that is not a residence is under the hotel, motel, boarding home definition. So we can see the definitions for tourist home, a dwelling in which overnight accommodations are provided or offered for transient guests for compensation, provided that such use is secondary to the occupancy of the dwelling by a family. Tourist homes include bed and breakfast, providing that the use is secondary to the occupancy of the dwelling by a family. And the hotel, motel, boarding house definition, boarding home definition, is a building or buildings in which overnight accommodations are provided for transient guests for compensation, including bed and breakfast, where the bed and breakfast is the principal use of the premises. So, this
came up because people had questions. People who don't like a particular proposal wanted the definition that they preferred that would make the use not allowed near their homes. And so determination of a particular building, which of these categories it falls into, is something that I'm sure you've heard complaints about, and something that will go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So that's, I'll skip ahead a little bit to.
Sorry, can I ask a question? I feel like somewhere in the last week, I saw a more precise definition of primary use versus secondary use.
So there's no definition of a secondary use. And I think something that's important to be clear on is that the primary use is tourist home. Tourist home is a defined use. So we're not talking about primary and accessory uses here. One of the allowed primary uses is tourist house.
I'm
Right.
not sure. Okay, I was quite certain that in the definition of a tourist home somewhere, it said that the primary use of the building has to be.
Well, right. No, it says
Principal.
Yeah. Neither of those, actually. It says a dwelling in which overnight accommodations are provided or offered for transient guests for compensation, provided that such use is secondary to the occupancy of the dwelling by a family.
Right.
So there is no primary.
To the occupancy of the dwelling by the family, then the family is the primary use of the home.
The whole tourist house is a primary use. So it's important to keep that distinction here. Tourist house is a use. It's a defined use. It's one of the primary uses allowed by the zoning.
So what does it mean to be secondary?
Well, that is the question for the interpretation. And in this case, I've rendered an interpretation on this, and it's consistent with past enforcement by the town that being secondary doesn't mean a smaller space, doesn't mean a smaller number of people. Being a home for a household year-round, owner-occupied, that makes it a primary use. So I think it's important to jump to this slide about authority, and so that we're not having unnecessary discussions that can't lead anywhere, right? So the town board has the authority to create, change, edit the zoning law, and the zoning law defines what uses are allowed and are considered reasonable in each zone. Right? So in this case, it is not up to the planning board to decide if an allowed use is reasonable in a zone. It's up to the town board. So the town board can decide what uses are allowed in each zone. The zoning officer, me, interprets the law that the town board adopts. The town board cannot change a zoning officer interpretation. Someone can challenge a zoning officer interpretation at the BZA, and then the BZA hears that. So I want to make sure that we're clear about process, because it can be just a waste of time to be spinning wheels on
It's
things
not for
that
us to do, it's not for the planning
they
board to
can't
do
go
either.
forward. Right.
You know,
So-
what we can reasonably do, and that's why we're having a discussion now, is look at is the law as it currently in place, the way, what we really want it to be, and if not, what might we think about changing it to?
Right. So part of what I don't want to spend a lot of time going into my interpretation. I promise you, it's very well researched and documented and consistent with what the town has done before. One example, Tenwood Lodge has a special use permit as a tourist house. It's a 6-bedroom, 5-bath house with an additional 1-bedroom apartment, and it's occupied by 2 people, and it works as a bed and breakfast. It's a tourist home under the town's definition of tourist home. That doesn't comport with what a lot of people would like it to be interpreted as, but that's the way it's been interpreted as.
So it's a tourist home, even though
it would not be allowed in that zone if it were not a tourist home.
It's a tourist home, even though, what if there was a building and you were, okay. I mean, it's my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, but that in a situation like that, you know, people come in and rent it and the homeowners leave. So, I mean, is that a tourist home? If the owners are not in the building?
I'm not sure that was determined by, with that, you know, I don't know.
I mean,
What they
if,
do.
if,
I assume it's not a tourist home when that happens, but
right, right. I mean, in that instance, it's, you know, you, there's nothing to keep you from renting your house. As I said, we got no regulations for rentals apart from when the family happens to be living there as well.
and I'm not saying that it's not a problem.
Yeah, no.
I haven't heard it as a problem, but,
Yeah.
you know, there's all sorts of different flavors that, you know, can affect different neighborhoods in different ways.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is that,
something that doesn't affect anybody.
right.
Um,
The peculiar thing about our regulations really is that, you know, if the family lives there, then if you're gonna rent out rooms, you have to go through site plan review. If the family doesn't live there, somebody just buys the house and they're renting it, you know, by the day, there's no regulations at all.
That's probably what makes this discussion.
Yeah.
Yes,
That we might need to do something about the living document.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yep, exactly.
I mean, this isn't anything new. I mean, it's been talked about for a year and we just haven't worked.
No, we haven't.
Yeah.
Can I ask another question since I wasn't here at the time?
Oh, okay.
What was the intention of creating a low density zone or a rural zone?
But each of the zones has a purpose at the beginning of it. I can't quote it, you know, off the top of my head, but
Development
yeah,
areas that.
generally. But I would also say all of Danby is zoned fairly mixed use. All of Danby's zoning allows things other than purely residential. We don't have restrictive residential only zoning, or what some people call exclusionary zoning, that only allows single family homes in a neighborhood. So our zoning allows things like home businesses, cottage industry, agriculture, and most of the zones, as you saw in the previous, allow this tourist home use as well, which is just another one of those kinds of businesses that's allowed. The other thing that I think, you know, if you're thinking about coming up with new definitions and having a clear limit, because in this instance, you know, it really does fall on the zoning officer to decide based on that definition, what is the limit? And as I said in my determination, which you can look at if you're interested, obviously, if someone wanted a house with 10,000 rooms and then they were going to live in one of them, I wouldn't consider that to be a tourist home. But so far in our zoning, the kind of only clue that we have to what a limit would be is the fact that we clearly conceive of tourist homes with 10 rooms. We clearly conceive of tourist homes with more than 10 rooms because we specifically say they're allowed in commercial B and C. So our understanding of what that means has to include the possibility of a tourist home with more than 10 rooms because we specifically said that it's allowed somewhere. So that can't be fundamentally different from what it means to be a tourist home.
Although the other consideration is what the building code would allow as being regarded as residential versus commercial.
So the zoning and the building code do not have to agree with each other.
Right, no, they don't.
It is convenient in this circumstance that the zoning that was put in place does mirror a requirement of the building code. So just because something is allowed by zoning, that does not give someone permission to do it if they don't comply with the building code. And, you know, you may have heard people are concerned that, oh, if you change this use from one thing to another, you're going to trigger problems with the building code. The first thing to consider there is it's Steve's job to enforce the building code. Just because we tell someone they can have a certain business or whatever, they still have to comply with the building code, just like the health code. So there's no requirement that zoning and building code match up, but in this case, the building code does have a defined use that is considered the same impact and the same safety concerns as a single family home. And that is what's called an owner occupied lodging house. So owner occupied lodging house with 5 or fewer guest rooms and 10 or fewer total occupants are considered an R3 occupancy class. R3 occupancy class is the lowest impact type of residential use, and it's the only occupancy class that's allowed under the residential code, which is a less strict version of the International Building
What are
Code.
you calling it? Owner occupied what?
Lodging house.
Lodging.
Yeah,
So it's
that's a building code title, not a
Right.
zoning.
Yeah. So that matches closely
Yeah.
with the, 10 beds or less.
I mean, I'm, I know that this is sort of coming out of specific issues, but I mean, that's how things get addressed
Yeah,
often.
right.
So if that's, I feel bad that, part of it is, needing to defend a stance that's, maybe logical, but to me, I keep thinking, we passed the zoning. And part of what we said was, if we see things that aren't working out, or we see things we want to change, that we revisit it. And that's
sure.
sort of what, to me, this is, a year ago, we were talking about, meeting and talking about short-term rental stuff, because things have cropped up in different areas. And
Right.
that, this is, I guess, for me, a push to get moving on that. And it's not the only thing either. I mean, there's other.
No,
things
no, it's
that-
not, but it is one
know,
of the ones that was
so-
identified in the course of things.
Yeah,
And this, and what's in there now was not anything we consciously put in, it was just
Right.
carried over from the old law.
right. So, it's,
How close does stuff like this mirror the state, any kind of, there's no state regulations or anything, you can do anything in, I understood that there's lots and lots of primary uses for your house or a building.
So if, for example, something started as a lodging house and then changed in a way that no longer met this building code definition, they could be required to upgrade the building to a different standard.
Right.
To meet you could call it the commercial code. It's actually just called the International Building Code. The main building code, the residential code is kind of an exception, an easier way to do that. So, so if someone, you could take a house and turn it into a bomb factory. You just have to follow the requirements.
not my,
Follow the requirements of the building code, which would be a lot of work, and it would, you probably couldn't really do it. But as far as the building code is concerned, that's based on health and safety. There are requirements for different uses. It has really nothing to do with zoning. So zoning can say, you can have R1 occupancy, you can have commercial occupancy. All of those things can be allowed in one zone under zoning. There's different rules for them in the building code for what kind of fire ratings they have to have, whether or not they need sprinklers.
Right, and this is a big deal, because I can remember in the course of the last 20 plus years, proposals for, like for instance, John Kingsley wanted to use the West Danby Church when it was at one point for shop. And that proposal fell through because of its proximity to the house next door. And in order to satisfy the building code, he would have to sprinkle the building, and it was a deal breaker for him. It was too expensive to do.
yeah,
And I can remember other times when Angel Heart was going and, they were expanding into the barn, they ran into some heavy duty requirements there too,
Yeah.
because of the fire code provisions and requirements that have to satisfy in order to
Right.
use that building in that new way.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm not hearing talk about is, how does anybody have a license to do anything like this? Is there such a thing? I mean, because I know, for instance, that there's a place near me that I know they call it, they say they have 2 apartments, but they have 3.
Hmm.
And there's a tax implication. There's income tax if I rent my house out, I have to count that as income.
Yeah.
How does
right.
anybody know if I don't have a license or I don't do anything?
Only if
You-
your neighbor squeals on you.
Right, and
Yeah.
and people don't necessarily,
Yeah, no.
unless something like this happens, and then the people get upset.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
No, there's
Depends on
always
where you
that.
live.
The apartments have basically snuck in. It comes to light when somebody tries to sell their house.
Yeah.
And they sell it as a 3 apartment house and say, where did you get the authority for it to be 3? There's no record of it having been anything but 2, you know.
well, I know something just happened with the house in Westville, but I mean, we're talking about trying to set something ahead of time for people who want to do a business.
Want, well,
And
I
of
mean,
course,
Well,
I
need.
every time I see these zoning things, I think, oh my God, I didn't know you have to have a permit for that. Oh my God, I didn't know you have to have a permit for that. Oh my God, I didn't know I could turn my house into, right now, I could turn my house into a primary residence. I mean, I could rent.
Sure. Yeah, people do, you know, they go on sabbatical and they rent the house while they're gone.
Oh, that I think that feels different to me, but
Yeah.
it may not be. Is that what we're saying, that it's all the same?
It's all the same right now. Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing that, this group or whatever, I mean, I'd love to have a town hall meeting on this stuff and just invite everybody.
Well, that might be the way
Everybody's
to,
idea,
that might be
but-
the way to approach it.
But one of the things, I mean, it really is Jim still here? No, he left. I mean, I happened to be on Jim Hollihan's porch on Cottington Road.
Oh, yes.
and it was a wake up for me anyway. And there kept being this interruption. It was a strange, and after like half an hour, I realized what I was stopping and paying attention to, and it was cars coming in and out of the house across the street. And everybody, I actually said, well, what is that? And they were like, they have, I forget what they call it, it wasn't a bed and breakfast, but they rent out. So it was a different, it was a different traffic.
Yeah,
movement,
short-term
and
rentals.
It was very disruptive. So when it was, but it was right, it was right there.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's different, the lodge off of Steam Mill, I mean, nobody's, hardly anybody, is, it's less, there's places where it'd be less disruptive. And I'd like to, I think that may be something we can take that into consideration when we're thinking about it.
You might not be able to, because everybody has the right to make money. I mean, that's where it comes, it sounds like they might not have rights, unless we have the same thing everywhere.
Well, no, we don't have that.
We have differences in different zones.
Yeah.
And that's why we have different zones. That's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, for the board's consideration, I asked the county tourism planner if he had data on how many active listings we have in town. And there are 91 unique short-term rental listings. 78 of them are whole houses.
Or what?
Whole houses.
78?
6 are private rooms and 7 don't say whether they're whole houses or private rooms.
And do we not collect taxes on any of those?
We collect a lot of taxes on all of those.
Well, aside from just the property taxes.
Yeah, I mean, we the town don't, but there was an accommodation several years ago with Airbnb.
Right.
And I forget whoever the taxing authority was.
The county hotel tax.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to keep track of these things and have the people pay room tax on them.
Airbnb automatically remits room tax to the county. The other providers do not. Technically, it's the property owner's job to report to the county and pay the room tax. And the room tax is what funds the county tourism program, which is basically grants to things like the State Theater and the Ithaca Festival and other things that bring people to the county.
How about
What short-term rental, what do they need, 6 months, a month,
No, less than a month.
less than a month?
you didn't list any duplexes in that breakdown. Is that called whole house?
Yes,
Yeah,
so if
yeah.
you rented half of a duplex, that would be renting a whole house.
It's a whole unit,
Yeah,
whole dwelling unit.
yeah. And we do have,
Yeah, we
actually, there's a,
have a lot of,
right behind Beardsley Lane, there's a duplex that both halves
we have a
are
lot of.
full-time, short-term rentals.
Yeah.
I think we might be able to build a community center. We had.
Well, you can only, there's very specific regulations about what room tax can be used
Yeah.
for. And unfortunately, that's not,
Yeah. That doesn't come back to the town. It's not like it's not
not directly.
It's not like the sales tax, which is distributed,
Yeah.
based on population outside the city. This goes to, well, where the room tax money goes,
The tourism grants,
tourism, yeah. Who administers it?
the county,
Yeah,
Nick Helmholtz.
Yeah.
specifically. I mean, and there's a board, the,
yeah.
I don't, Strategic Tourism Board, I think.
So, I mean, we benefit, but not directly.
So we need some work on this. We need to set up a committee.
Well, that's the
and,
question, how to approach it. I mean, but Leslie suggested it might be good to have a town hall.
I think that would be a good idea, but I think it would be good to have a committee first. Because what you can then do is focus the town hall better by providing good information and somebody can look at alternatives and rather than just having people come and talk, you can provide information ahead of time. So it would be good to have a committee set up now to provide information that then when we have a town hall, people can be responding to something specifically and
I've really enjoyed the town hall meeting, where, it's scheduled for 2 hours and the first hour is people giving information about what, not all, I mean, I have always thought that has worked out well. And then, and then opening up or breaking into small groups or,
I mean, like that.
yeah.
I kind of like
Yeah.
the idea of, when you said that,
Yeah.
instead of putting it all on David, which of course I would say
Yeah.
defer to David because he knows this, we as a committee members can easily misinterpret and say, that committee member says something, that one says something, this one says something, and we're not on the same page, not by any design, but because it's hard. But the other, when you said what you said, then, I mean, it might be interesting to have representatives from Airbnb or someplace just to talk about what those are. Because I don't think a lot of people realize some of the requirements that are on those organizations or what they do with their money or how they, if something happens on an Airbnb rental, what liabilities, they don't know, all of that stuff is. And that Verbo, you don't even have to VERBO or whatever you say. They advertise on television, go to a place and nobody's gonna be there. Your private house was the whole time, no residents, no people on it, just you.
I mean, I was also thinking more, also along the lines of getting, the board getting information.
Leave me out.
Giving
That would
people
make it
information,
make
but
it
also
big.
then letting people talk about, what do they want? What's important? I'm thinking of the comp plan when we did that. And, had interesting charrettes around that. What do people want? We don't know.
Right.
I mean, we could say what we individually want, or we know what a couple, neighborhoods want, but what does everybody want? That to me would be.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember having a conversation with Bruce Richards, over a year ago, and we were talking about Steve alluded to it earlier, the Cayuga Heights, I think went first. But the town of Ithaca also has, regulations for short-term rentals.
Yeah,
The driver there mostly is that, you know, of the people who actually buy a house to rent short term in the neighborhood. So it's different than you when you live there and you don't live
Right.
there and you're
right.
people coming and going all the time, you know. Sometimes they're party people and you don't have any, you know, people don't have the same feeling about it was when the residents lived there. So, so they've got these rules in Cuba Heights, you know, you can only rent so many days a year.
Yeah.
And you have to register and you know, get a permit to do it.
Yeah.
So they can keep track of you and, it's a big deal. And
Well, there was my sister rent, you know, they rent whenever they came to visit.
Mhm.
And once was downtown, and that was a little loosey-goosey, but that when they rented up near community corners, and, you know, it was, I mean, there could only be certain number of cars in the park, in the driveway, but this was actually somebody's house, like,
Mhm.
you know, so that would be a tourist.
In our,
You know,
our,
it's a little sort of apartment attached to the house.
Yeah.
And, but there were a lot of, I mean, we had to park our cars somewhere else and carpool, you know, so we only had one car. Because
Mhm.
it can only allow two, so there's, you know, ways to.
Well, who's
mitigate traffic.
regulation for this? Whether it's the homeowner who's renting it or the county?
I think it was both. I mean, I think it was both, I mean, but there's, you know, some of it was with a homeowner, but there were also.
Yeah, the main features of their laws is, you know,
They have-
limited number of days per year.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I think they also require owner occupied, which courts are now finding to be unconstitutional, just FYI.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to read about, yeah.
Huh.
And essentially, that's what our definitions hinge on, is whether it's owner occupied. I mean, if it were not owner occupied, it would be a rental and unregulated altogether. We have a whole category of tourist home, which is essentially because it's owner occupied in part. With the ambiguity regarding, you know, whether it's a principal or secondary to the rental part of it, but you know, but it's only in that category that it even figures in, because if they're not there, you could do it, and it's, you know, doesn't matter whether it's one room or 25 or one house, you know.
Well, the Danby ones had the duplex had to be owner occupied.
Yes,
I mean, that was,
it came and went.
yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, it just was, it talked about what people were, you know.
Yeah.
What people's feelings were at the time, you know.
Well, that's a strong thread that has run through a long time, which is the
There
feeling
are
that,
people around here that want to see that come back.
you know, the owner occupancy makes a difference in terms of
Oversight. And,
yeah.
but there's ways that short-term rentals can work that out too.
Yeah. But if the courts are coming down against having that be a criterion, that's going to be a serious consideration.
Yeah, they are. Basically, in terms of restrictions, you know, if we were to approach this from what I always recommend, which is that if we end up going to court, we'll win, which isn't the approach that every town takes.
Yeah.
But if we were to approach it from that, and you wanted to regulate all short-term rentals, I would recommend not an owner-occupied requirement, but rather a requirement that someone can respond to a complaint within half an hour.
Right.
Right, you can have a reasonable requirement. It has to be something that can be applied equally regardless of who the owner is.
Right.
So there are places that are saying, you know, with this, with short-term rentals, one problem is you have these corporations who come in and buy up a lot of houses and they run it. And so there's places trying to pass laws that say, you know, no one can own more than 3 or something like that, which courts have said that's not an equal application of the law. You're applying the law differently depending on who the owner is. So, which lots of people would like to do, like, we can talk about the things that people would like. People would like if we could have an individual vote on property rights on every property, but that's not the way it works. People have constitutional rights, so you know, that's kind of the resource that I can be, is keeping you up to date on what kinds of things are supportable.
What the options are basically.
That would
Yeah.
probably be a really good groundwork to do that first, so that
Mhm.
people, you know,
Yeah.
stop the imagination stuff where it can't happen,
Mm.
at least lay that down.
And one thing is that because of the town's previous interpretation, like I said, how many of these we have, there are towns that have tried to have a number, like a maximum number that you can have, and that has been upheld as reasonable, but that cannot exclude the existing
Right.
people from doing it because
Right.
they've already, you know, invested in it. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, you know, there are options, but to be clear, you know, that this would be a significant change from the current state of things, which is it's allowed
The
everywhere.
Wild West at the moment.
Yeah.
It's a lot of what?
It's the Wild
Oh,
West
okay.
with respect to rentals.
Yeah.
So, David, when you began talking, I thought I heard you say that this was something you had thought about dealing with last year, and it got put on a back burner, and that was more of a priority. So, can you talk a little bit about what sort of a process and timeline you envision?
So what we were talking about last year was specifically a law to deal with the rental of accessory structures. So we specifically, in the zoning update, we did not deal with short-term rental because I didn't want to torpedo the entire zoning update. That was a much broader discussion over something that's a very hot button topic. This is a huge hot button topic wherever it comes up. The town of Ithaca spent 5 years on their law that they just adopted either at the end of last year or the beginning of this year. 5 years on one use. This one use that we allow everywhere, and you have had no complaints from the operation up, just people who are afraid of one coming that's not here yet. But as far as I know, this is not something the town board hears complaints about existing short-term rentals and how they're functioning.
Well,
fact-
I mean,
in fact-
we have, I mean, we don't have, you know, this is not common, but, you know, maybe because a lot of short-term rentals have been under, you know, under the covers, they, you know, not put in an application.
Yeah, I mean, it is a
So-
hot button.
But
That is generally how,
people complain. I know that people complained in West Danby, many people complained about it, you know, with you know, the short-term rentals, taking over housing options, that's been an issue.
yes, I have heard concerns about that, that
Well,
it takes
there's
housing off.
complaints, I know,
off the
I know
road.
specifically from West Danby, but I mean, yeah, I hear things, I mean, because people, you know, it's not like, you know, hitting specific neighborhoods,
Yeah,
tight neighborhoods, so.
but in theory, you know, everybody who's, you know, renting a room or whatever is subject to our definition of a tourist home.
What do you mean?
If they're renting out, if they live in the house and they're renting part of it,
Uh-huh.
then they're a tourist home under our definition. And there should be site plan review in order for them to be doing it. But,
Okay,
and,
so
Right, but from the data, most of what's happening is
yeah,
people are renting
but you could say
out.
out of 91, only 6 are of that kind.
But definitely, and 7 are unknown, so,
Yeah.
you know,
So-
maybe,
I want to get back to the process and timeline though.
Yeah.
Yes,
That you're envisioning.
Right.
Are you deciding whether you want to get involved or not?
No.
I guess the question is the scope, right? Because
Right.
right now, the board is considering a very different scope than what I was talking about,
Right.
right?
Yes,
I was
that's-
talking about something that would allow people who live in Danby to add accessory units to their property that they could rent out short term.
So we don't have any pending plans to discuss short-term rentals per se.
There has been, I think, no push to do that. That there's been the general understanding that it's allowed. And that there wasn't, you know, really significant appetite to do anything different than it's allowed.
That was Bruce's point, was that, you know, is this a solution, looking for a problem, you know, because, you know,
No.
it's happening, but nobody hadn't
No, I
had
don't
a
think
problem.
so. That's, I mean, I've heard a lot of concern. And
Yeah.
you know, it was enough of a concern, you know, a year ago that, you know, things, you know, got waylaid, but, you know, it's not just a popular topic, I mean, but it, you know, comes up in different towns.
Mhm. Well,
There are
absolutely. I mean, it was
people
very,
who are concerned.
yeah.
In different areas and,
Well, it
you know.
certainly seems at variance with this board's prioritization of maintaining a rural aspect to the Danby community.
I mean, having all those rentals, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, why would you say that, Steve? Because I mean, if you were doing a touristy type of rental, you know, the rural character of the town is part of the attraction for why you might.
Well, I'm not talking about using the town as a selling point for your short-term rental. I'm talking about the consequences of multiple short-term rentals having a deleterious effect on the rural character of the town.
Yeah.
Right? If there's more cars coming and going, if there are people who, you know, are here to party for the weekend. And I mean, speaking purely for myself, I had someone who, you know, put up a building near my house, and then for the express purpose of renting that out. There's people come in all the time. It's like a party city, like having a frat movie next door.
Mm-hmm.
I think
My
that's
neighborhood used to have a flat house party.
There's one like,
Party house.
I have a question, like,
Yeah.
when I was doing
think
the
that-
census, when you said the room thing, I went to one place and because the way the algorithms went, got sent to that same house repeatedly. And the numbers for the rooms or for the people were different. And when I finally called, I called the agent for that house. And they said, it depends how many people we have who want to be in this house this year. Then we just change the numbers. And I mean, it was maybe in census impossible, but that would be a case where if you had 10 rooms and you only had 5 people, then they named them, you might add 2 rooms to 1, but I mean, it was all confusing. There's no way to control something like that. And it meant there were a lot of people in it, if there were a lot of people that wanted to rent it. I mean, it sounds to me like regulating any of this is really difficult.
Well, regulating everything in a rural place is difficult. It's a big town. You have, you know, 2 staff people, me and Steve.
Right.
Every law that you pass comes with that difficulty. There's, you know, there's 3,500 people and 2 people whose job is implementing this law, and you know, there's a lot.
One of the complaints we do hear a lot is, you know, we're not enforcing the law we've got.
Yeah. But it would be nice to come up with something that encourages people to be open and honest, and I'm thinking of I think the last one that I remember is the Roses, who came and got okay to rent out a room.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it also involved the neighborhood. You know, people voice opinions, and, you know, there could be, you know, you can't use that driveway, use that driveway, you know, I mean, there could be ways to minimize the impact. But, you know, if we could make, you know, come up with something that wasn't, you know, punitive and unreasonable, you know, people maybe would come forward and say, I'm renting out a room, or,
And I'm sensitive to what Steve said, which was that, you know, the increased traffic, and that's one of the reasons we were concerned about density in the first place when we established it in the density for the zone. You know, the more dwelling units you've got, the more traffic you've got. And here we're talking about basically enhancing the traffic by having the more frequent turnover.
No,
short-term rentals is
it already is. We're trying to understand it, sounds to me, and then figure out where we go. Once we don't even, I mean, this is only what's actually reported.
Yeah, which is,
well, this is
most of it.
So that number is not what's reported to the county. The county purchases data from a company that has a sophisticated computer system that crawls the websites of half a dozen different short-term rental companies, and then I don't know how, but uses some way to figure out which of those are the same building, similar pictures, things like that.
Yeah.
Because these companies don't give up the data willingly. So you have to hire these third-party companies, and it's something the county is trying to figure out is there a way that towns can work together to purchase this data, because it's expensive. So someone like Cayuga Heights, they have a law that says you can only have so many days. Then how do they enforce that? They have a very small percentage of people who actually do register as they're supposed to and track that information. And then is someone gonna go around finding all of the
Send up a spy balloon.
yeah
Yeah, exactly.
and trying to collect on it. And how important is that compared to the other priorities that the town has with limited resources? How much are you going to put towards it? Essentially, it's I think a very important question.
But it also, I mean, the issue can impact neighborhoods in ways that I think most people don't want to have impacts happen. So, I mean, I think if we can, work to alleviate some of those issues, maybe not all of them, but.
Yeah, and I wonder whether, you could address the impacts without having to necessarily do it by way of regulating short-term rental.
Well, it's tied to the short-term rental though. And then there's wear and tear on roads and water systems and sanitation systems.
I think you'd have just to keep us in a box, I think you'd have a really hard time showing that short-term rental has any more significant impact on roads or water systems than people living full-time.
Not the roads, I mean, they're, trash and things like that. That's true. I mean,
Well, there's more cars.
yeah.
So presumably that would have more impact on the road.
But part of it depends,
Probably.
if it's a house that's being rented sporadically, then it's not gonna change the traffic. In fact, there'd probably be less traffic. If you have somebody living in a house, traffic's gonna be there all week long, every day of the week. If you have somebody renting on the weekends, certain weekends a year, there's less traffic.
But if I have a 5-bedroom house for my family, then we probably have 1 or 2 cars. If I have a 5-bedroom house and I'm renting them all out all the time, then it's more like 5 cars coming and going.
5 or 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, except most of the time it's groups renting them, not individuals renting them. Especially if you have houses.
And most of them are houses.
Most of them are houses, yeah.
It's gotta be a family or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
the house next to us is the farmhouse from David Hall is an Airbnb, and there's not very much traffic because they rent it out to groups, and they don't rent it out every weekend because it's not on a good location for groups to come and stay.
Well, that's because it's not a good location. But if someone were in a good location,
Because it's not close to where you want to go and tourist. It's not a tourist, Danby is not a tourist destination. And there's another house that was just bought as an Airbnb on Vendron Road, and quite honestly, that doesn't have much traffic in it either, because I've driven by there and it doesn't have much traffic going on, and they don't rent it all the time. If people come and rent it, they rent it for a weekend.
I don't know, I feel like we need to find some way to get information about what people, we give out information and get information from residents about what they want and,
well, is it possible
But
to
they
have a
don't
public hearing on short-term rentals and just hear what people have to say?
we could do that. I
We-
mean, I'd really love.
We call it
Not plan
more like a, public information meeting,
Where we, but also, set it up so that it was,
a
people
forum.
could talk. and
Yeah,
Get into small groups and, no fighting and yelling.
we call it a forum or something,
What's important to you?
Yeah.
Where do you think it would be okay?
But I think we also need to provide information in advance. Because if we waste time on people talking about something that's not legal, why are we bringing
yeah.
people out to do
Well,
that?
Not people, what people's ideas are. I mean, whether right now it's in our zoning or in
No,
our.
legal. He
I
just
think
said there's all sorts of legal cases that's been thrown on the court.
I don't know, I feel like if we, sit and give all sorts of legal mumbo jumbo to people, they're gonna turn off and leave.
Well, no, but there's no point in saying, well, what we really want is to limit it to,
Make somebody live in the house
Make-
that they can't.
exactly. So I mean, you have to know that there's things that don't, that we can't do. Then yeah,
That's probably not a huge list.
we just take it off.
No, probably not, but I think it's fair to people when they come, that they don't waste their own time. We don't waste their time.
No, it'd be good to go into the
Something
meeting with like a list of options, what can be done. And then have people express opinions of what do they think we ought to do, given a menu of things that we could do.
Or you might consider starting with just a simple survey.
That's
You could
probably
tell
better.
people that right now Airbnbs of a whole house are, if that's what you want to talk about, is the Airbnb of the whole house, which is most of the short-term rentals. If you want to ask people, right now it's allowed with no restrictions. Do you want the town to take up a process of considering to have some restrictions on that?
Kind of structure it so much that people are kind of vision to this, what would be okay here or here, a tent in the backyard, a trailer, in that vacant lot, there's lots of different short-term rental situations.
Yes, and I think we should look at the bigger picture, not just renting the residences that are there, but what about the accessory structures? What about the tent?
What are the experiences people have had?
Yeah,
Have they had good ones? I mean, the people who rent out rooms, I mean, how, they get complaints from their neighbors. I mean, there's all sorts of information we don't have.
Well,
And if we
I
want to
do have a question,
We all have different ideas.
but do we have experience creating and disseminating questionnaires in the community?
We
Other
did
than
it certainly
Korean.
through the comprehensive plan. There was widespread information gathered in that case. I was shortly moved here, and I was impressed with how much input that came in.
we
And I
did,
know we
we-
took part.
yeah, we did with the Henley revitalization project. too.
And how did you,
Right, well, that
like, what
was
were the
mostly
mechanics?
groups.
Was that through the newsletter? Was it on the website?
Every way we could,
Multiple-
including the Facebook pages and everywhere.
Well, Facebook didn't exist at the time because it's been a while. but-
Yeah, that's,
I mean, we had like basically once a month
Yeah.
meetings in
People said they
here.
didn't know one of the places it was on there.
Well, for the.
Oh, you're talking
comprehensive-
about the zoning.
You're talking about the zoning project. We're talking about surveys.
Revitalization,
Oh.
that was really getting people to come and talk about what they wanted and what they didn't want.
Yeah.
There were pictures up on the wall,
Yeah. We had charrettes of that.
People could react to that without getting mad or without.
and I have to say, I didn't come to any meetings, but I was serious about it, and I filled out all the forms that I got. So we did get forms in the mail.
Yeah.
We can certainly we can mail things to all the residents. We have lists.
Surveys, yeah.
When we have the town news mechanism too, without having,
Mhm.
I mean, we could try it. but-
When we did the commercial survey that was email and Facebook, I was shocked by we got a high response rate and the amount of the opposite perspective of what we usually hear in a complaints-based regulation environment, which is we hear people who come to complain.
Right.
When we just ask people, do you think this should be allowed? People thought a lot more should be allowed than we even did allow.
which was a bit surprising.
Yeah.
We're okay with it.
So getting to that point of, is this something you want to work on? Do we want to have a short-term rental regulations different than what we currently have? I will say, from my personal opinion about the effects of short-term rentals, I think what we're doing now is backwards. I think it should be way easier to have a short-term rental where you live than to be an investor who buys 20 houses and rents them all out. I think, renting rooms on your property helps you pay property taxes. It's very equitable. It helps, and you're there to head off issues. I think there are problems at the market level with having people buying homes, people in California buying homes in Danby to Airbnb full-time and making it so that families here can't afford them. So I do think our regulations are backwards. I don't see why it's harder to rent out rooms in your own house than to buy another house and rent it out all the time. But that's, you know.
Well, you're making a lot of sense. I mean, how do we, I think the idea, I like the idea of having a meeting, questionnaire and all of that. So what would you suggest is, this is something you know a lot about, we task you with the beginning of an idea, along with all the other billions of.
Oh, yeah, that's the other thing.
Or,
Yeah.
you know, or there's somebody here, I'm not capable of it. I don't have enough information. I'm not good enough.
Well, there's a variety of ways we could approach it. We could create a committee, you know, to work with David. We could charge David with coordinating the whole thing and then just basically give him a little guidance about what we'd like to see happen if they can do it, you know? Or
I like that guidance he just gave us, not we gave him. I want.
Well,
That, you know.
one thing that I am worried about, and I think I expressed this concern to Joel, is right now, there's a very particular group of people who are very scared about one very particular circumstance. And that's not a good way to make good decisions for the whole town.
Right.
And,
But this
you
is
know,
an issue, Dave, I mean, this has been brought up and we were talking about
sure.
dealing with it because it wasn't, I forget it wasn't Sealand's stuff, it was somebody else's stuff that there was concern about, you know, and that was a year ago.
Yeah.
So I don't, you know, it just happens and it's too bad, but it happens if there's a situation right now where people are upset.
But can you let David finish with his? He was in the process of making a case. Can you finish it?
Oh, well, just that I want the board to consider, you know, timing with this kind of thing is really important. And if you want to hear from the whole town, it's going to be a particular time where you're going to have to work extra hard to hear the whole town voices because of that situation. And, you know, there's always things, I mean, I delayed before because I was very busy, but also, you know, we've got the noise ordinance that people were absolutely freaking out about, the,
which you're
you
gonna come
know,
back to
Hamlet
shortly.
extension lot, the logging ordinance, those are all going to be before you again. And it's I don't know, I didn't want to bring a process forward that got you all kicked off the board, basically. There's only, you know, so much controversy you can take at any one time. And this is a difficult topic that takes towns years and years to deal with. And I think we've shown that we can work together and do things faster and more efficiently than that. I'm, you know, really happy that we did the zoning update in 1 year. That's unheard of. So, you know, if we want to work towards a framework for regulating, I guess what I want to know is what scope you want to work on. If we want to throw the door wide open and ask the whole community if they want to address all of short-term rentals in their variety of forms, you know, we could have a process.
That's what I would like to do, because we haven't looked at, and nor do we even have any provisions for, you know, some of these short-term rentals, you know, the tenting and the you know, the accessory buildings and the, you know, as well as, you know, the renting of the whole house or a room in a house. You know, that the universe of possibilities is something I think that you at one point that it would be good to look at in its entirety and say, well, what makes sense and is compatible with the you know, our objectives in the comprehensive plan. You know, what do we see? You know, it's a long history of, you know, renting space in order to help pay the expenses.
For hunting cabins.
Yeah, right.
I think that's been a perspective of past town boards, is that that's actually a key component of rural character, is that you have that mix of things and that people can come and have vacation houses or come and enjoy the forest.
Well, I'm wary of relying upon the path. Because
Yeah.
short-term rentals are a recent
Yeah.
phenomenon at the scale that we're seeing them now.
Right.
I mean, this
So-
whole, yeah, this whole, online renting of things is a new
It
phenomenon.
is a good-
Right, so I don't think we can just say that, we've never had to regulate it before, let's keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
Not regulating it, and I also think that it doesn't have to be
Right.
controversial. If you start by
Yeah.
just getting information
Yeah.
from the community.
I mean, things are also changing. I mean, we're, I don't know how many, I haven't seen the figures on how many new houses have gone up. But I know in my neighborhood, they've gone way up. I think there've been like at least 30, 35 houses since I moved here. Within a country block. It's, things are changing and things are maybe becoming more transient. But there's also interesting, I like seeing neighborhoods get together and talk to each other and try and deal with problems or whatever. I think that's good. There's some good stuff that comes out of that, so I'm not afraid of that, but I think things are changing. And, I'd like to see us tackle this, and maybe it'll be like other things, nothing major will happen, but I think it's worth looking at.
I mean, yeah, I agree. And, if the end result is we say, well, you know what? It's not so bad the way it is.
Right.
That would be okay.
Right. Right.
If on the other hand, it's like, this is an oncoming freight train, we ought to do something to put the brakes on.
It's incoming. I think it's incoming. Things are different.
Yeah.
Having a survey or having a question or presenting is another way to show that this body of people, including the people who come around, are people who do want to learn and want to get more involved, and that's what we really want. We really do. And it's good for us to make that effort to welcome people and not with a threat that, we're gonna make, like the zoning was threatening to a lot of people. And this doesn't necessarily, we need to start figuring out ways to say, we want to know more about what you want in the town. And even that coma thing probably, that was probably a helpful thing along those lines too, because, and the electrifying things, the different ways that we're trying to show that people electrifying America, or whatever way you want to say it.
Decarbonization.
Decarbonization. Well, I've heard it the other way around too. But anyway, the idea being that that's good enough.
So
Maybe we could start with something in the newsletter, a couple pages of.
Yeah, we might have
Do a special newsletter.
So don't worry about the pages. If we really prepare this.
I'm not sure that we can put more pages than the 10 and have it
more.
No.
Yeah,
It might
there's-
cost a lot more because it's not just adding another page. It's the thickness.
yeah, but we could,
We could
have a special issue.
Yeah.
That is just.
we have a regular 2 or 3 pages of repeated information that we could skip for a month.
Yeah.
Because it is the one way to get to every household that we have right now.
But the other option is we could send out a separate mailing with a survey
I think
or
that's what
something.
you're just saying. I think that was what Joel said, a separate 2 or 3 pages.
Well, no, I
But
wasn't.
that's saying a totally different, in its own angle.
Only separate mailing that applies
Yeah.
just to this, so it's not tied in the middle of something else, so they have to see it.
Saying, sorry.
I was saying, use the newsletter
We
as
did.
the vehicle.
I heard
Not to
that
do
first,
something
I heard
separate.
it immediately,
Yeah.
Chuck, when Pat said, no, then we think, okay, all right, let's have separate mailing.
I mean, people get them.
But I think it's more effective with a separate mailing, especially with that kind of issue. Because when there's a lot of things in there, many people don't see everything, and you don't want to
That's
miss it.
true, yeah.
And if it was a second mailing, would that be something like a survey that people mail in, or would it be directing them to, for instance, town website
All
where
of
they
the
could?
above.
All of the above, we cannot guarantee that people can get to the website and use it, because the newsletter now The first two issues, we specified that if you would prefer having it online instead of, fill out this form, 19 filled out the form, 19 out of 1,520.
It's all different, Pat. That's for a newsletter, but it's all different.
No, I'm talking about people who are not likely to go online and fill it out. So we need to allow them to mail it back in, yes.
Yeah.
I know.
And of course, the other question, if you really want to mail it back in, you can provide it with a post-paid return.
Mhm. So I guess that brings up, is this something that you want to put $5,000-6,000 towards? To do a mailing with a paid return that goes to everyone in the town? I'm literally pulling that number out of the air, but I don't think that's wildly off base.
Especially if you're doing a post-paid return in first class mail, it's a lot more expensive than mailing a newsletter at
I don't like that.
bulk rate.
Really don't.
Or it could be a paid return postcard, it saves you a little bit.
Mhm.
Well, the other option is you can have places where they can drop it off.
Right.
And then you have several places you could drop it off. You can drop it up here, you can do something with Danby.
Or they can go.
That's the fire departments to have a box.
We-
We did that with. That's what it was.
What's a good return on a survey? Let's just be,
Depends on how easy.
not
it
like,
is.
we don't need 3,000, we don't need 1,500 answers. So,
Right. I mean, a few hundred would be
Yeah.
substantial.
and I think the more options we give them for filling it out, dropping it off or whatever,
Doing it online, sure.
Do it online, and
We
Oh,
can make
yeah.
it available online,
Yeah.
on the website.
email it back,
And,
email it back,
yes.
email it back.
Or just a Google form on the website.
Yep, that's what I was,
Yeah.
that's what I was.
There are lots of
Hard
options. We don't need to limit it to one, as long as we get back. The more options, that's probably the better. It's not the same as saying, I want this information every month. It's something different.
So, I'm hearing some consensus, but, how does it get organized to happen? Do we need a committee, or do we just want to have David sort of respond to this?
I think it would be helpful if we had a committee so that we don't stick David with everything. That's not exactly fair.
But it kind of sounds like, I mean, what I'm hearing is that there's some consensus around wanting to ask the broader community, do you want something? And maybe some questions in there about what kind of scope
Yeah.
would we want to look at? And maybe that's the first step, because I mean, I don't know what the answer will be, but the answer could be leave it alone.
Yeah.
Yes. But I think we should ask them to weigh in on their whole range.
Mhm.
Do you know whether that, I mean, we don't have to reinvent this. It probably has been done in lots of towns, and there might be
Conceivably.
surveys out there that
Yeah.
we should look at that. And I don't know, if you think there are, is there a way to look at stuff like that, or?
I can take a look. I mean, I think it wouldn't be hard to come up with a fairly simple survey that
Exactly.
starts asking the question. So maybe it's something that I could bring back to the board at the next meeting this month.
I'd like that, personally.
A draft survey.
And because the reality is, the longer it is, the less return we're gonna get on it.
Absolutely.
Mhm. So we asked a few simple questions on a lot of, on a wide range of possibilities, but without prejudicing it by having it be too specific.
Without stress of,
Without being too leading, which you can easily be with it.
it's really easy to be.
Why
Yeah.
don't you take that survey, 2,500 copies of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you can
Go in.
if you can do something and get it to us in advance of the meeting, so we can look at it, and then we can
Well,
do.
at the next meeting, there's the one after that. And we-
Right, exactly.
That's all of a sudden, not saying that has to be done today.
No, but if we want it for the next meeting, we're saying it's gonna be done in the next 2 weeks, but but if it doesn't, if it's not doable in 2 weeks, then
Yeah.
sure that, but to say that what we would like is a proposal for a survey that covers the whole range. And then we can give you some feedback on whether that looks like, yeah, that's good, let's do it. No.
Mhm.
Right, that sounds like a plan. Okay. Are there things we specifically want to bring up next time?
No.
Well, I mean, I think there is. I mean, we didn't bring back the plan for workplace violence assessment team. And we really should get that addressed.
Yep.
And I hope we can get capital planning without, without being June,
What was that last one?
capital plan.
Yeah,
We've got $300,000 in ARPA funds. And we need to start decide, prioritizing where we want to
right,
spend money.
right.
I would like to suggest that when we have additions and deletions to the agenda, that we don't put them number one under business, that we put them at the end of business. We
could
had
do
all
that.
these things, these things were already on the agenda beforehand, already known ahead of time, and then all of a sudden, the
Right.
last things that come up that get covered first. And in this time, absolutely everybody left that had to do with the issues they were concerned about.
That's a good point.
Right, right.
They all left, nobody
We could
here.
also just be more flexible. I mean, we have the fire department over here, I mean,
Yeah.
not all of them.
Right.
We could have done that.
Right.
Uh,
Would be nice.
That would have been nice, probably right here, yeah.
I agree.
Some of them were on Zoom, but still.
I think it would be nice.
But anyway, that's not a bad idea. So,
So maybe it's just a matter of restructuring the agenda so that additions and deletions is literally the last.
well, that's basically what Pat's suggesting, is that we add it on to with the additions be additions to.
End of
He does
business.
that, they be added on to what we already have
Right.
to do rather than, it's just that it wasn't really the case this time. Well, it kind of was.
Yes, it was.
Well, because, the Lorder stuff is, something, like Steve
could
could be
just
here
be-
for.
We could just be observant as to who's in the room
Right.
Yeah,
or on the screen and to try and get those things first.
yeah,
So that people don't have to
yeah.
sit and look at us.
Well, keep in mind, I mean, most of the people left before we even got to the business at all.
I know.
Because we got spent so much
Yeah.
time on this
Yeah,
really
stuck in
exciting
the
stuff of
weeds.
paying the bills,
Joe, that Cube Lake Watershed and the municipal organization,
the Quio.
we had a memorandum, MOA, that was signed on April 20th, 22, for 5 years.
That's what I thought it was.
That's
It's
okay.
5 years.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
And then what happened to it?
what do you mean?
Where is it?
We're at the agreement.
Yes.
I probably have it,
Yeah. But
I'll have to look for
you
it.
probably have it
but
where, I don't. Or maybe I do, but I don't know where the hell it is, because it's not in my folder, it's called
I got my list of the laws out today,
Yeah.
and I've got another list of these things, the contracts and stuff that
Yeah.
I.
There's a folder called contracts in Work Drive, where it should be.
Anyway.
I mean, I looked in there and it wasn't there,
I just, yeah.
but
So
that's,
my
but
first one
that's
that's
where
coming
it
out.
should be.
And then on my list of all the resolutions that go out. You guys can sign.
Yeah. Okay. So, in light of that, we can have the Clio dude on the. Slippery.
God, I saw a fat and then fat went down. It was like, she did her head.
We could put the Clio on the warrant next time.
What did you say?
The Clio dude can go on the warrant next time, in light of what you just
Yeah.
discovered.
Yeah.
Joel, if you want to chat really quickly after the meeting, I just did a quick search for Quio in the Zoho work drive. And the problem is that memorandum of agreement was put in the town board meetings folder, which is why I've been trying to put things in the town of Danby, contracts, agreements, blah, 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 and not in meeting folders because nobody remembers when that was discussed. So it
Right,
is in the work drive. It just,
Yeah, it's fine for them to be in the meetings folder, at the time of the meeting, but then it needs to be depopulated and put in the relevant places.
Right, afterwards.
Afterwards.
well, I think it needs to be in the proper place to begin with, because then nobody needs to worry about moving it. If everything is linked to the agenda regardless, then
Yeah, but if the only way to, as you know, if you access it through the agenda, then you can't mess with it.
which is good. You don't want to mess with it.
Well, I do.
No, it's not. What's
But
on
you
the
can-
agenda is what
you
the
can
public
get
has. We
to
need
it
vote on
from-
what the public sees.
Whatever
You can-
that, when you mess with it, then that messes us up, it messes up the.
If things aren't approved, I mean, if that thing had not been approved,
What thing?
the memorandum of understanding,
Yeah,
then, or agreement.
it's just it's a memorandum of agreement. That's what they call it,
Right.
MOA.
I mean, it's nice to have everything in the agenda folder or for the meeting. And then when the meeting's over, the stuff, either stays there and dies, or it gets moved into contracts, laws, whatever. But if you just if we had put that into a contract folder before it was signed or agreed to, then that messes everything up too, so.
Well, there's a drafts folder.
Yeah.
We need to have things workable, that's all.
Well,
No kidding. That's what I'm trying to do.
I'm not gonna look at a draft folder. I wanna look at the agenda folder and then folders that are.
well,
Can't have a cake and eat it too.
Well, yeah, we can, and we should, and that's one of the things that we talked about as staff, is have a meeting of the board, focused on organizing,
Yeah,
the records,
that's a good idea.
where are things kept? Because I'm only just in the last few days gotten, got the really big picture where, some things are in the servers, some things are in the cloud. The server's divided into sections. And there's a paper.
A what?
Yeah,
Paper? Yeah.
that's not to mention the paper. Yeah.
Oh, did you actually adjourn the meeting?
What?
Did you actually adjourn the meeting?
Not yet,
You did.
but I think,
We're well over 2 hours.
yeah, but we're ready to, I think. We were at the item on, which is discussion of next meeting agenda. And I think we covered it, right? So meeting is adjourned. Thank you for anyone who stayed to the bitter end here.
All right, I'll stop recording.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.